JJ, the CPA. Hope you all are doing well. My apologies. I was on a wonderful show with the Facebook marketing ninja, who is worldwide, and he is changing the world when it comes to marketing in general and on Facebook. And we were just going through a lot of different questions related to PPP. Oh, you can be in the screen. Related to the PPP. And so from my perspective, what I thought would be good is if I just went live. I don't know that anybody will, show up or not, but it's an opportunity for me to have a set time where I can go and answer questions, even the ones that I've received in some of the videos. I've been trying to keep up. Last night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt like I wanted to answer some questions. And so I probably spent an hour and a half in bed in the middle of the night trying to answer as many questions as I could. I fell asleep a couple of times. So I'm a CPA practicing, and I have, clients that I'm taking care of during the day and trying to do this, and I'm loving it and I'm enjoying it. Thank you, J&K and Clay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's support. I really appreciate all the comments. And so what we're talking about is, are you still accepting new clients? I guess I need to figure out how to do that. I am not taking on new clients right now. But what I'd like to do is talk about PPP real quick in an overview, and then I can jump right into some questions. But one of the things that you're welcome. Thank you, Luis and Emmett Osborne. Would you mind recapping what we would do for PPP and who would do the EIDL? So Emmett, thank you so much for that, because that's just what I was getting ready to do. So when we're talking about the PPP, right, that's the Paychecks Protection Program. The first thing to know is you can only get it at the bank. If you're doing the EIDL, you get that at SBA.gov. And what I'm going to jump right into is the biggest question that I seem to have, which is, why wouldn't you get the EIDL and the PPP? And you've probably seen me on my videos if you watch, which I appreciate, that I kind of get a little uppity. I kind of get a little, like, don't do both, right? But here's the thing, you actually get penalized and you get stung if you do both. Okay, so let's first talk about the era of before the CARES Act. Okay, if we're in a situation and we're in the era of before the CARES Act, there was already the EIDL, the COVID-19 disaster loan. And I was just going to see if you could kind of help monitor some of these questions.
In there.
Okay, you just sit right in here. Like, you don't need to, you can sit right next to me.
Okay.
We've got Amanda on with me. So when you're looking at EIDL, because I really want to break this apart, if it's before the CARES Act, that's in one era, and we're waiting for some direction, but it's going to be treated the same for the first part of what I'm getting ready to say. The first part I'm going to get ready to say applies to whether you got it before the CARES Act or after the CARES Act, and it's this. And everybody, they don't hear the second part. They hear the math, and then they go, oh, I got my answer. So I really want you to hear the second part of this, which is this. If you qualify for $75,000 for the PPP, okay, which means you had $360,000 of the payroll costs that all get included, divided by 12, you're at $30,000 average monthly, times 2.5, you have a $75,000 amount that you are allowed for the PPP. Okay, so hear me out. Like, don't even you hear the first sentence, but then you got to hear the second sentence. So when you go to get the PPP, if you got the EIDL or you're planning to get the EIDL, you're only going to get $65,000 of the PPP. So I even had a comment last night, and they're like, I think you're confusing people, JJ, because you're saying you can't get both. Why does it matter? Who cares? I got 10 here. I got 65 here. I walked away with 75. Why does it matter? Because the 10 that I get with the EIDL, I don't have to pay it back, period, the end. Okay, you have to meet the qualifications. You go to SBA.gov to get your EIDL. But here's the thing. This is the part that's almost like the magic trick, you know, when you were a kid and they did a magic trick and you don't get it. And then you just kind of don't think about it because your brain didn't know how to digest it. And all I mean by that is this is that 5th grade math problem that I'm getting ready to tell you. So you qualify for 75,000. You took 10 over here, okay? So you're only going to get 65,000. Now you walked away with 75,000. You walked away with 75,000. 10 of it over here is forgivable. And you're never going to have to pay it back. Okay. You got 65 over here. So of your 65, guaranteed, no matter what, 10 of it will not be forgivable. If you just got the PPP, if all you did was get the PPP, you qualified for 75, you got the 75, you met the qualifications, all of it's forgivable. You walk away owing nothing. By going to the EIDL, yes, you end up with 75 grand, but when it's all said and done, even if you did everything perfect, you will owe $10,000. That's a lot of money. Okay. So that's why you don't want to do both. And the reasons why is that it's for the exact same purpose. It's just that the EIDL came into play before the CARES Act. So if you're in a circumstance, and maybe what you've heard, because I had a banker say, hey, I found out how to get an advance on the PPP. You just go get the EIDL. They're two completely separate programs. It's not an advance on the PPP. When you see advance on SBA.gov, it does say advance 10 grand. It's an advance on a completely separate SBA loan that you do have to pay back, zero forgiveness available on it. So what they're saying is, hey, we'll give you 10 grand. And if you need more than that, okay, this is before the CARES Act, well, you can come get a loan. It's 3.75. Okay. When PPP came along, it's like, well, based on your payroll, or if you're self-employed, then you're going to be in a situation where you can go and get more that can be all forgivable. I have clients that we're looking at, $3.5 million as their PPP amount because they have that much payroll. Okay. Well, that's way more than they're going to get on a $10,000 EIDL. Now, here's who it makes sense to do an EIDL. Someone that's not going to get a PPP. Here's who it makes sense to get an EIDL. You don't have wages. Here's who it makes sense to get an EIDL. Your wages or payroll cost or your self-employment income, okay, is less than $48,000. Okay. So if it's less than $48,000, if you just do the math with me, okay, my total payroll cost for the year is less than 48,000, or my self-employment income, my net self-employment income based on what we know best now is less than 48,000. So if I take 48,000, okay, divided by 12, I'm at 4,000 times 2.5, right? So I'm going to end up with less than $10,000. Let's see, 48,000 divided by 12 is 4,000 times 2.5. I'm sorry, you end up right at 10,000, okay? So 48,000, if you're right at that mark, divided by 12 times 2.5 gives you 10K, okay? So if you're below that 48,000 mark, go get an EIDL because you're actually going to get more. There's no provisions of, I don't want to say oversight, but you don't go back on an EIDL and prove what it is that you spent the money on. You do have to qualify. You have to be a business. You have to have activity. There's a couple of questions in there. What was your gross? And what was your cost of goods sold? Cost of goods sold would be in essence like inventory. It doesn't mean your overhead or your expenses. So that's kind of the overview. I am going to mention though, that when you're talking about the PPP, that it's 500 employees or less. So it doesn't matter if you're a partnership, a C Corp, an S Corp. I don't know why someone would be a sole proprietor, a Schedule C, and have that many employees. But if you did, so the key here is it's an employer that qualifies for this. Now, if you're self-employed, okay, meaning you don't own a separate business, so to speak, it's just you that's the business, or you've decided not to do a separate return, or you've decided to just do everything on a Schedule C. Here's what I'm telling on April 6th, 2020. Here's what I'm telling self-employed individuals and clients until we have further guidance. Okay. Look on your individual return to schedule SE. SE is in self-employed. Find that schedule in your return, because that is your net employee or it's your net self-employment income. So if you're self-employed, meaning you don't have a separate tax return, you don't have any employees, but if you have self-employment income, self-employed earnings, those earnings are subject to self-employment taxes. Self-employment taxes is Social Security and Medicare. Social Security and Medicare sounds very familiar, right? That's payroll tax. So when you have someone that's an employee, there's 7.65% withheld, there's 7.65% matched, which equals 15.3%. So on wages, even for the owners, up to 100,000 qualifies for the PPP. So the government put the self-employed in the same position, self-employed being you have an amount that is your net income that is subject to these exact same taxes, the 15.3% self-employment tax. Okay. So you're now in a position where you're able to then go in and get yourself a PPP loan, if you will. And so on self-employed, here's where I boil it down. Go get that SE, that Schedule SE. If you own a partnership and you're getting a K1 from it, look at box 14 and look at box 4. Box 14 is self-employment earnings. Box 4 is guaranteed payments. Both of those things are going to be down on your individual Schedule SE. And the self-employed, okay, you're applying under your ID number. If you have a separate entity that's a disregarded entity and it has wages, then you would file under that. So that's quite the overview. Sorry I was running late. I was on a fantastic, now he's one of my best friends. Okay, Manuel, he is the Facebook marketing ninja. I'm a blip on the map compared to this fine gentleman. He's helping people across the world. He's on Facebook, but he's everywhere. He is already massively well known, and in this coronavirus crisis, he has been just giving away everything he does for free, and helping people now that they are at home, how to market your business, even though you may have not ever done that, online. So not that I have anywhere near the same influence in any way, shape, or form as Emmanuel. And from my perspective, I think we even have people that are on now, which I so appreciate that we're on the show. We may just do a real marathon. I see that we have a lot of questions, and the purpose of going live is to try and just answer the questions as we go. And then just know this, and then I'll get into some questions. I'm going to, is there a way I can pull this screen over here and then.
No, you can't.
So I can be here and here. Okay. So some of the things that I may do is in some of my answers, I'll give you a brief. And if it's okay, I may refer you then to a video to go into some of the details if I've already covered it. So I am going to just say that last night I had a question from somebody. They're out of California, and a great CPA here, it turns out, in Edmond, Coy Ivy was his name. So I'm going to, the first one I'm going to address is the one I said, hey, I'll address it today, which is if you have a C Corp, okay, whatever your wages are in that C Corp, even to yourself, will qualify for the PPP no more than 100,000 per employee. If you're not paying yourself payroll and you're paying a dividend, doesn't count. Same thing for the S Corp. So with a C Corp, it does qualify if it's 500 or less employees, but you still have to have the wages as in W-2. So I know as small business owners, I hear a lot, it's like, well, my payroll. Well, payroll is W-2, literally W-2, not who I pay regularly or my independent contractors. Only the W-2 will count. And April 3rd, the SBA came out and made it clear that for those that are paying self-employed individuals, they don't get to include it. What's our first one?
Hey, your first question is from JF Mart, and it says, thanks for all your support. It's really helpful. I have a question. Does it make a difference if I pay payroll to a payroll service provider?
Is this mine? Great question. I really appreciate it. It doesn't make any difference, but what I would say is it will make it easier. So I'm going to tell you about my website, but I created it as a community service. You won't even find a way to contact me. You don't put in an email address. It's not a funnel. I'm not selling anything on it. So you're going to hear me maybe say that periodically. But if you go to jjthecpahelp.com, okay, that's a website I created. It's not for my clients. It's for the community at large. On there, if you go to the PPP page, you will see that I have in there 2 different worksheets. One's PDF for each and one's a Excel for each. And then I have in the playlist called the PPP application, you'll find videos where I go through each of those calculations. Here's why I'm telling you this. If you're going through a payroll company, here's what you would want to request from them to fast track, okay? So we work with a fabulous payroll company, good friends, good clients, Caleb, Adam, and Nancy, and their whole team here at Edmond. But when the CARES Act came into play, I stayed up all night, and I was in the law. I don't think I slept, but maybe 3 hours for 6 nights. And here's why I'm telling you this is I got with that payroll company and I said, here's what our clients are going to need, our joint clients. So let's start developing it right now. And the payroll company, they had to spend a little extra time developing this, but here's what you want to request from your payroll company. The first and foremost, especially being April 6th today, you want your first quarter 941 for 2020. Okay. And here's why. In the law, period, the end, it's based on the last 12 months. If you go to the law, it's based on the last 12 months. For whatever reason, I've not come across anything official in any way, shape, or form, but the banks are allowing those that are applying to use the last year, okay? So let's just go with, here's what the law says. So you would want to request first quarter 941 2020 because they probably haven't even prepared it yet, because most times quarter just ends 3/31. Most of the time, they're not even coming out with these forms till mid-April. So get it now, request it now, and be nice about it because they're going to give it to you in advance. And then maybe you have a way to log in, but it'd be probably even faster if you said, hey, can I get second, third, and fourth quarter? She's called 3 times. If I'm getting second, third, and fourth quarter of 19 and first quarter of 2020. Now I've got my 4 quarters, so I'd ask for that first. But then here's specifically what will help your application, I think, go through quicker with the bank is the banks need to see payroll detail by employee. So what you'd be asking of the payroll company that's going to save you a lot of time and effort, and I will indicate to you how to do it if you don't have a payroll company, but you want to ask them for if they'll just run one report that is April 1, 19 through March 31st, 2020. Just one report that shows for all the employees what the gross is, what the match was, what the state unemployment tax was, and then if they're tracking in the health insurance. So get that as well. And then do the worksheet. Now, a number of banks are coming up with their own worksheets. So I got on the stick and put one out there right away that can be used. So know this, it's all the same figures. They may just want it in a certain format. So don't have to wait for your bank to give you the format. Now, if you are using QuickBooks, you just go into payroll summary and you're going to just change the dates to April 1, 19 to 3/31, 2020. And then it will produce that one report. Okay. And then in QuickBooks, you should be able to go back and look at your prior 941s, but you really want to do it based on the last 4. Now, here's a shortcut, okay? Whether you're using a payroll company or not, here's why I think the banks are maybe somehow allowing this or allowed to maybe go with it. is that if you're doing it based on calendar year 19, just go to your W-3. The Form W-3 is the, it's the summary of all the W-2s. So the next thing I'll tell you, and we'll go to the next question, is if you're looking at the W-3, which is for calendar year, go to box 5, which is the Medicare wages. If you're going by the 941s, which all lead to the exact same thing here, okay? But if you're doing the last 12 months, you're not going to have a W-3, of course, for the last 12 months, because a W-3 is on a calendar basis. So if you're doing, and I've got two different, it's on the PPP page of jjthecpahelp.com. But when you're looking at the differences of the two, when you're going by the 941, go by line 5C, column 1. And I have a video that says 941 in the picture. So I talk about that. I have another video that says get your bank's document, or get ready for the bank, or get your bank documents ready. The reason you want to go with box 5, which also all of the box 5 or the line 5Cs from 941, is this. So if you're taking notes, if you're doing calendar year, okay, you're doing based on 2019, get your W-3 and pull your number from box 5, okay, which is, it says Medicare wages. Then if you're doing the last 12 months, get the last 4 941s, the last 3 quarters of 19 and the first quarter of 2020. And what you're going to pull off each one of those is line 5C, column 1. Okay. Now, just so you know, that right there goes into the W-3, but you're having to do it for the 12 months. Here's why it's the most pure number. Okay. Box 1 gets reduced for starters by pre-tax deductions like 401k. Okay. Nowhere in the CARES Act do you have to reduce down wages for pre-tax deductions other than on a 125 plan. So you don't want to go with box 1. Now you may be looking at it like my clients, and you may find that your box 1 is higher than the other boxes. But if you're more than a 2% shareholder and that S Corp, this is an S Corp circumstance, paid your health insurance, the more than 2% shareholder has to pick up that health insurance in box 1. The law in chapter 24 of the law, which is referred to in the act, indicates that that amount in box 1 is not subject to withholdings. Therefore, it's not considered wages for these purposes. So you can't go with box 1. Now, here's where we're at. The banks right now are just, they're holding all the cards, so to speak. Okay. So if you're at the bank, they're probably not going to go, well, what did JJ say? Or you're going to say, well, JJ told me this, or JJ told me that. What I am telling you is what the law says. Okay. This isn't per my opinion. It's what's in the law. But you still want to go with that Medicare. And even if your bank will allow you to do box 1, don't do it. Go with box 5. It's going to be the more pure number that hasn't been affected, because you have to remember, you have to, at the end, when this is done, sit in front of a bank examiner, which probably works at the bank, who represents the SBA. They're going to review how you came up with your number. Okay. Right now it's just showing up with enough documentation so the bank can hurry and get you support. Okay. So even if the bank's allowing you to do it, and I get it might be tempting to just go with the higher number of box 1, 3, or 5. Box 5 is the most pure. So you probably heard me say it. I get to present on behalf of a wonderful organization called Surgent. They provide continuing education to CPAs. So I've traveled over 50 cities. Amanda and I have.
I have a really awesome thing that you can tell them since you're providing Surgent.
Okay.
JJ doesn't even know this yet. This just came in that you won the 2019 Outstanding Discussion Leader Award.
What?
Out of all of the discussion leaders, you won.
What? Oh my gosh, that's wow.
They're sending you your stuff in the mail.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. What an honor. What an honor. Wow. So the reason I even bring that up is more to say, I stand in front of CPAs for 8 hours. It's just me putting on the show, talking about the tax, okay? And the reason I say that is that when I'm doing similar, it's usually about 5 different seminars, but they have a core amount of information in there. And so part of the reason I feel so confident about box 5 and being the safe number for you and the pure number is that, but I'm gonna get a little emotional about that just thinking about it. But but box 5 being the most pure number, so that's the number that's used. And I don't want to confuse anything, but there's a new tax law out related to qualified business income deduction. Box 5 is the pure number that you use for that. Box 5 is used to determine what your retirement contribution is. So box 5 is really seen as the pure number, okay? And at the end, you've got to figure out how much of this is going to be forgivable. Well, if you started with the wrong number, okay, you're already behind the 8 ball.
All right, so we're going to have to fire these off.
Okay, all right.
Like quick.
Yes.
Because we're 30 minutes in. All right. I'll try to get an easy one. Scott Thompson asked, I want to pay my employees hazard pay. Will I be able to use my PPP money towards that?
So I would say this off the bat, if you kept all the same employees and you're now giving them hazard pay, it would not count, because this is not to give employees a raise, and it was kind of put in that place so that there wouldn't be raises given to maybe these bigger companies. So unfortunately, that won't count. But I will tell you this, when you're going to the loan forgiveness at the end, and you'll have to watch some videos to come on this, because the loan forgiveness part is complicated. But what they're looking at as well, though, is how much salary did you have in this period of time coming up, and how much salary did you have in the prior year? They're going to look at it in 3 different eras. So if you've had to let some people go, and you're paying a minor amount, another $1 or $2 an hour, you're going to be under this threshold, which is basically a 25% threshold. So I know you're not asking to play any games here, and I understand what you're asking because you're trying to take care of your employees, which is fabulous. So I'll just say this, if all things being equal, all the same employees, all the same pay, but you're adding hazard pay, it wouldn't count. If you've had to let maybe somebody go and you're still kind of in that margin, then I think you're going to be okay. But it really kind of comes down to the end, because you got to know what's your head count, at June 30, what were the dollars spent. So it's a little bit of the after the fact. So here's the short answer, it wouldn't.
Okay, next question. A lot of people are telling you thank you. They've got all their stuff in today, and it was because of you that they were able to do so.
Good.
Omari Ingram says, how does single member LLC get the EIDL?
If they could ask, okay, if you can tell me, let's look for his answer. You're a single member, okay? But I want to make sure, are you an S Corp or are you a Schedule C? Because you can be a single member LLC and then file an S Corp return. Let's go to the next. I'm going to come back to it, but see if you can tell me the answer to that so I can just answer specifically what you're inquiring of.
Okay, Llc Tax.
Just go with the first name.
Says single member LLC, but all my employees are 1099s. Where do I file my PPP?
Okay. Does it say how they're taxed?
No.
Okay. Either way. So Friday morning, SBA came out and made it clear that you will not be able to include any of the 1099 amounts that you pay somebody else, even if they're regular. And quite frankly, if they're regular, it might be really an employee, but all that aside, it won't count. And here's why. Let all of your individuals that are getting the 1099s or small companies, they get to go and apply for their own PPP. And then you get to apply based on your net after you've paid all of the 1099. So if I'm remembering the question yet, you don't have payroll to yourself. You pay everybody 1099. So now you have a net amount. And if you are a Schedule C, that would be subject to self-employment tax. So go to Schedule SE, and whatever's on that amount would be what you're going to, in essence, qualify for. That amount divided by 12 times 2.5. But very clearly, you don't get to borrow money to pay your 1099 individuals.
Daniel Borba, as a one employee S Corp, if I get the EIDL advance but rejected for the EIDL loan, can I still get the employee retention tax credits?
Okay, well, I'm gonna break this out to say if you're an S Corp owner and you're the only employee, you do qualify for PPP and or the EIDL. Remember, if you're under 48,000 in payroll costs, okay, it wouldn't make sense to do the PPP because you divide that out and you're going to get less than 10 grand if you're under 48,000. Then you go for the EIDL. If you are talking about the employee retention credit, it sounds weird, okay, but I see nothing in there, and I'm not even talking about taking advantage of the system, but I see nothing in there that prevents anybody to qualify for that. So you just have to meet the qualifications that the entity is still paying you. It has the funds to pay you. Now, I will say this, if you're using money from EIDL or you're using money from PPP, in essence, you're not able to deduct those wages, and therefore you're not going to be able to get a credit. But assuming you didn't have EIDL, assuming you didn't have the triple P, yes, the credits will qualify, even the ones in the Families First Coronavirus Act, on yourself, because remember, when you're an S Corp, you've got several roles. One of them is an employee, the other is an owner. And so as an employee, you're going to qualify.
Steve says, self-employed, one person, do I use the total of the 1099s or the net on the Schedule C?
So for yourself, as we know it right now, it would be the net, and more specifically, go to Schedule SC to find that. Now on the application, the one that came out, and make sure that you're using the application. Again, I'm telling you, go to my website as a pure resource. There's no website to enter. It's not a funnel. I sell nothing. You don't need to give me your information. But what I'm telling you is, if you go several places, I have the latest PPP application. Make sure you have the one that came out Friday. And the way that you'll know that you have the one that came out Friday is that at the top, it's asking, in essence, what category you are. Let's see, is this not popping up? Is it me? Okay, yeah. So you'll know you have the right one because at the top, it's going to ask, are you a sole proprietor, a partnership, a C Corp, an S Corp, or an LLC? All I'm saying is, based on what we know, it's going to be based on your net, okay? But the reason I'm curious is that because it has all these different categories, the sole proprietor, the self-employed, and the independent contractor, I'm wondering if they're going to have a separate set of rules. So I'm hoping, I had a video on it where I talked about, is it the gross or is it the net? My thought is that there's going to be different qualifications for each one, which will then kind of complicate it to know, well, which one do I fall in? So stay tuned for additional videos on that, because I'm waiting for clarification. But if you needed to know right now, it's on the net, and look at your Schedule SC. That top line, then your Schedule SC will show very specifically your self-employment income.
Paul says 1065 K1 partnership income included in PPP, yes?
So if you have a 1065 partnership and you have employees, the partnership will apply for the PPP at the partnership level for the payroll in that, okay? Now, as a partner, you cannot pay yourself wages. Like, that's just been law. It has nothing to do with that. If you have a K1 from a partnership and there's an amount in box 4, which is guaranteed payments, or an amount down in box 14, which is self-employment earnings, that's your golden ticket that you're going to qualify for PPP, because you have self-employment earnings. But that will be down at the individual level. So to clarify, the partnership applies on the partnership info and ID number for its employees. The partner that has the K1 with these self-employment earnings would apply at the individual level, using and basing the number divided by 12 times 2.5 on what is on that K1. If your K1 does not have an amount in box 4, which is guaranteed payments, or in box 14, I don't think you're going to qualify for anything, because you've not had self-employment income, which is the same as payroll in essence.
Will we, Jerry says, will we have to pay income tax on the grant?
Oh, thank you so much. I have got a list of videos that I need to make, and that's one of them. The short answer is no, but here's why. You're not going to be able to tax deduct any of the expenses that the PPP money paid for. Okay, so if you qualify for $75,000 and you have $75,000 of qualified expenses, the payroll, the utilities, the rent, telephone, internet, the interest on the loans in the business, as well as health insurance and the retirement match. So if you're in a circumstance where you've got that money, 75 that came in, the 75 that you spend, it's going to be a zero-sum game. Okay. Now, if you don't spend it all, now it's just a loan. Okay. So you got 75, you didn't spend it all, or you got 75 and you didn't spend it on the proper things, and now you owe. Well, that's not a taxable amount because you owe it back just like any other loan. So if you're doing QuickBooks, here's how we're going to be doing it with our clients. And I have a note. There's a CPA that said, hey, it'd be a good video is how are we going to account for this in QuickBooks? So whether you're using QuickBooks, but if you have an accounting software, here's how we are going to account for it. When the money gets deposited, we're going to put it into a liability account because in essence, if you don't spend it, you owe it back. And then as the money is spent, it's not going to go to the P&L. The account that we're going to pick for that is the liability. So the money comes in and my liability is here. And then as I spend it, the liability goes down, it goes down, it goes down, but none of that hit the P&L. There's a second way that you can do it, which is you can show down in the other section, here's the PPP money and here's the expenses related to that, okay? But in essence, you're not paying tax on it, but it's because you're not deducting it. And if you don't mind me saying, I'd love it if you're on and you haven't subscribed. I'd love it with you if you would think of it this way. You'll get notifications, and so I really appreciate everybody that's on, just because it's so exciting for me to be helping people. I'm just going to take a quick screenshot because I'm just absolutely honored that we have 331 people on right now, and I'm just going to stay on as long as I can.
I'm an individual landlord renting my investment property with monthly rent, $40,000 a year. What would you recommend, PPP or EIDL?
EIDL all day long because you don't have wages. And are you able to hear Amanda ask the questions? Someone just say, are you able to hear Amanda ask the questions?
All right.
So go with the EIDL for the 10 grand. You'll do it under that ID number. And you'll have to be, though, in a situation where you're in jeopardy of collecting your rent. Okay, great. Thank you so much. They said they can hear you.
Is EIDL up to 10,000 or is it always 10,000?
Until like 4 days ago, it was 10,000. Okay. So I had clients that would put money in, put an application in, and their net was not even 10 grand, or the net was a loss. But the qualifications of it was that you were at least grossing 10 or had 10 of expected expenses. So maybe I just spoke that wrong. They didn't have 10 net. Okay. They had at least 10 gross. So I think you've got to have at least 10. Now, what I've heard, and if anybody's done it in the last 4 days, because I saw some comments last night that either themselves or their clients had went and applied, and somehow the SBA is now asking and limiting the amount of money that's giving out per your employee count. So I'm going to have to investigate that a little bit more. But if this was 4 days ago, I would say it's 10 grand. Put in your gross. If you don't carry inventory, you don't have cost of goods sold, and you're done. Don't put in your net. Don't put in your loss. What was your gross? So if you're an active business and you're generating income, and I would just probably say an educated guess, at least a 10, and you feel you're in jeopardy, then you would be able to get that. And then if you don't have wages, then the EIDL is definitely probably your only option.
Have any of your clients actually received a PPP loan yet? It's all hurry up and wait everywhere we look here.
Yeah. So I think as of now, all the clients of mine that have applied, they've been submitted and not one of them have been approved. So it started Friday. So I'm pretty excited about that because by getting the payroll company on board on what we needed, I was able to, like hours after 3/31, be pulling together those reports, getting the calculations done. I had the clients already lined up, which is just all to say, I think I'm ahead of the curve. So I don't mean it to, I just more mean it as I think my clients were ahead of the curve. I think my clients had what they needed, exactly what the banks wanted. So they were able to get them in. And then the banks typically that I'm working with, I was in communication with to say, hey, what is it that you need? Is it this or this? So then when I was going through with my team, I was saying, okay, these clients are with this bank. They're going to want these things. They're with this bank. They want these things. We did a Dropbox, shared it with the client. They sent it to the bank. Boom. So all that to say is that I had a video where I said, exercise patience this week, get it in. I would anticipate, even if you've gotten them submitted on today, the 6th, or tomorrow, the 7th, I don't see how the money comes out or to you earlier than next week, just because it's like a fire hose that's just starting to get water going through it for like the first time. It just takes a little time. There'll be some spurts. So don't lose hope on it. Whether you're a fan of the president or not, the president has indicated, as well as those in Congress, that if for whatever reason the $349 million does run out, that they will replenish it. But nonetheless, it is first come, first serve.
And Tommy said, everyone is answering the question of how single member LLC is being treated, but how is multi-member LLCs being treated? And he said that he is a member of a multi-member LLC with 3 partners. They all get a K1, and wanting to know if they can treat that as their payroll calculation.
Okay. So when you say LLC, just for the group, an LLC can be taxed as an S Corp, a partnership, a C Corp, or a sole proprietorship, in essence, as a disregarded. So the question that's being asked now, based on the words saying that they have partners, I'm answering this as an LLC, taxed as a partnership. So you would qualify if your K1 has an amount in box 4 or 14, which is subject to self-employment tax. And then you would apply for it at the individual level. Now, it could be, I don't think this is the case, but until we have further clarification here on the self-employment, there's a possibility, okay, that maybe that gets rolled up at the partnership level for simplicity, but that would probably be because the SBA may realize that if you're in a multi-member LLC partnership, that all of a sudden now the SBA is going to have to deal with potentially like 4 different PPP apps, right? 1 for the partnership, and then 3 for the partners at the individual level. So it seems logical to me that they could combine it. But what I'm telling you right now, April 6th, as I understand it, the entity, the partnership, would only be able to apply for the wages, and then the individual, based on their self-employment income, which is those amounts, would be able to apply at the individual level. But remember this, those that are in that circumstance, the self-employed, whether it's a K1 from a partnership or a Schedule C that's subject to self-employment tax, it's a little unfair, but you're not able to apply for the PPP until this Friday, April 10th. So what I'm encouraging, and I've been asking the banks, like, hey, have you gotten any guidance? What are you going to do on the self-employed? What are you going to do on the self-employed? So that the clients that are there, that are needing it, we can get some guidance. And the banks are just saying, we're just waiting for the SBA. So stay tuned on that, because I know this, there's been times I'm shooting videos at 1:30 a.m., 3:30 a.m., 4:30 a.m. So as soon as we know that, I plan to get some videos out right away so that you can be first of the self-employed to get in there. I will say this, if you're self-employed, ask your bank right away if they already have an idea of what they're going to ask for. Ask your bank right away if they're going to require a lending relationship as well as a banking relationship. And the reason for this is that self-employed, unfortunately, and if you're self-employed, okay, you're going to know this, but the banks look at you as a higher risk. And even though there's no risk to them with the PPP, okay, there's a risk that they're going to be left with your loan, which they then have to carry. And even though it's at 1% for you, that's not good for the bank. All I'm saying is test out the waters with your bank right now, today on the 6th. Don't wait till the 10th and then have your bank go, oh, well, we're really not doing the self-employed. So it is kind of, it's going to be a little bit of a niche. I'm probably talking a little bit out of turn, but the big banks, if you're with them and you have a lending relationship, you're probably safe. But the big banks right now are saying if you don't have a lending relationship with them, they're not going to be able to do anything with you. And I think the reason why is this. They're looking at, okay, if we're left with this amount of money from this individual on our books and we're only getting 1%, we have to keep reserves. So they're in essence kind of packaging and go, well, if this client has loans with us at 1%, but then they have other loans with us at 4 or 5 or 6 or 7%, they're kind of doing it as an average. Yes.
I'm an S corp and the employee, me, applied for unemployment. Does that affect anything?
So if you're going to collect on unemployment as an S corp owner, you're in a very unique state because most states do not allow that from the standpoint of you are your own employer. Okay. So it makes sense that you're an employee, you're going to go collect unemployment benefits. So that's at the state level. Okay. At the state level. What you do qualify for, though, is that my understanding would be the week of the 13th that the government will come out with how you can collect unemployment at the federal level, and S corp earners, self-employed individuals, are going to be able to get federal unemployment, and that's never happened in the history of the United States of America, that those levels. So I'd be curious if you got it. I'm not at all saying you don't, because you very well could be in a state that is allowing that, or maybe they have their own special provisions. Was there a second part to that, though? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Nope. Best Rides Texas LLC. I'm just saying their name because they comment on a lot of the videos, but apparently there's been some updates, so they're just letting us know that the SBA just told me live that 1099 payments are counted as payroll for PPP. And then there's been some new SBA rules that got released today, 1,000 per employee up to 10,000. So we'll have to see what the new rules are that came.
Okay, well, I know exactly what that's talking about, though, is that, I mean, I haven't seen it, but I know I have a little bit of an opportunity that I can get some advanced knowledge. So what they're talking about there, though, is if you receive a 1099, that will count for PPP, which could be some great news in the sense that if it's based on the 1099 you receive, you know that that's then based on the gross. So if you're getting a 1099 and it's for, $75,000, and then you go to your Schedule C and you have, $20,000 in expenses and your net's 55, like a question we had earlier, it's like, well, is it based on the $75,000 1099? Or is it going to be based on the 55,000 net? So if the SBA is saying the 1099 counts as payroll, they did say Friday. Okay, so don't get me. I'll have to look at it, but Friday morning they said, no way, no how. The person who's getting a loan is not going to be able to include in their payroll costs 1099s that they're paying, because those that are receiving the 1099 can go apply for the PPP. And so I think maybe what's been clarified there is you're getting a 1099, that'll count as payroll costs. But see, that's already been in the law, okay? And when you look at the law and you look in section 1102 and you look at the definition of payroll costs in the CARES Act, it already indicated that, okay? But it didn't say 1099, okay? So I think what the SBA is coming out with today is saying, hey, boom, it includes a 1099. Okay, so that's good news there. And then guess what? Thank you so much for bringing that up, because someone had asked here a little while ago, are you able to just get a flat 10K for the EIDL, or is it up to? And that's got to be really brand new. And I appreciate those that commented over the weekend or yesterday, because what they were saying then is now verified, which is it's now looking to be 1,000 per employee from the EIDL. Now there might be, because I haven't seen the details on that, there might be a way that you're able to get 1,000 per employee plus some additional amount on your other overhead, so to speak. All right, what else?
I'm a self-employed sole proprietor and I've already filed for 2019. If I amend now to include the family leave credit, do you think that will trigger an audit?
Yes, because great job in getting filed already, because that'll most likely help you in getting a loan first as a self-employed individual under the PPP, because you've already got it. You've got your numbers, you've got your forms, you've got every tax document. So you are set good. Just make sure your bank's ready to rock and roll with you. But here's how the credit works for the self-employed, is that it affects and reduces down your estimated tax payments for 2020. No effect to 2019, period. So if you filed your return, you haven't filed your return, no big deal, because those credits do not affect anything related to 19, okay? What it would affect is when you go to pay a quarterly estimated tax payment, if you follow the guidelines and figure out how you qualify for a credit, then the amount that you're paying in for your self-employed quarterly taxes will be reduced by the amount of that credit. And then when you go and file your 2020 tax return, so next year, that credit will be reflected in the calculation of your self-employment tax. Now note this, okay? The credits are limited to the employer's portion of Social Security tax. Now, when you're self-employed, that's not as straightforward, okay? But for 2020, the first $137,700 of your net as a self-employed individual is subject to that Social Security tax. The employer portion is 6.2%. So if I were to say, what would be the max credit for a self-employed individual on themselves, it would be $8,537, okay? Now, first of all, you got 3 different kinds of credits out of the family first. So 2 of them are a max per day, 1 of them is a max 10,000 per, and then we have the employee retention credit, which I'm curious to see how that'll apply to self-employed individuals. Long story short, it only affects 2020. So it will trigger an audit if you amend 19 and try and take advantage of a 2020 credit on 19.
Have they listed requirements for people filing on the 10th yet?
No. All that we have to go by is the application, which shows the various items. And then let's go to the next question, and then I'll come back to that because I'm going to pull up something while I'm hearing the next question.
Are 1099 self-employed persons required to provide deductions, example, mortgage, rent, utilities, etc., or is it just the 1099 earners?
Great question. So when you go to get your PPP loan amount, none of that will come into play. It'll just be, we need to get some more guidance, but it'll definitely start with the 1099s that you got. It'd be your Schedule C, it'd be your Schedule SE. And then you are going to need to track, though, with the money that you get, what you spend it on. And then that would include, though, the things that are allocated to the business for rent, utilities, which include telephone, internet, your health insurance premiums, your employer match. You don't have state unemployment tax. Let's see if it's as a self-employed individual. The one curious part, though, is I have not seen anything yet. Like, how do you prove that you used your numbers for payroll, so to speak? Because when you're an employer, when you get your PPP money, you have to use 75% of it for payroll in the first 8 weeks. So as a self-employed individual, someone had said, so I just write a check to myself, So that's to come. Let me pull, okay, I'm going to come back to the question that was right before this because I'm trying to get to a document. What's the next one?
With a payroll total of $65,000, should I go with PPP or EIDL?
PPP, because anything above 48,000, you'll end up more with the PPP, especially now hearing that these new rules are in play for the EIDL. It sounds like you're going to get 1,000 per employee, and then maybe a little bit beyond that. So right now, though, the max on the EIDL is 10 grand, where the PPP, the max is 10 million. So I would go with that dollar amount. I'd go with the PPP. Remember, that's only with the bank. You're going to want to pull together your 941s, and then listen to the beginning. But then I have other videos to talk about what to pull together.
And this isn't a question, but just to let other people know, Special K Carmen says my bank has confirmed funding within 3 to 5 days, and I submitted my docs last Thursday.
Okay, awesome. So thank you for that. Yes, there were banks that were taking applications so that they could get submitted first. So good job getting there Thursday. So got submitted to the bank. But then everything opened up. What's next?
I'm self-employed sole proprietor, and I've already filed for. I already asked that question. Sorry. Not about COVID-19. Can I pay my wife on 1099 legally for back office work of my trucking company? LLC sole proprietor. Sorry if you already answered. I got logged out.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's a good question because, that happens a lot. What you can do, though, is you can pay your spouse on wages, but what we have to remember is it's based on the last 12 months. So if your spouse has been paid a wage over the last 12 months, okay, those wages are going to count. If they've been paid as a 1099, they're not. If your spouse has been paid as a 1099 from a company, and your spouse has picked that up as income on Schedule C, subject to self-employment tax, then your spouse would be able to apply. But remember this, there's not anything we can do now about it because basically whatever was in play February 15th of this year is in essence what you get to go by. So if you didn't have employees and you weren't paying, your spouse on February 15th, and now you want to start paying her, it makes sense, okay? So my beginning comment is saying it is allowed for all other purposes, okay? But if you haven't been doing it, it won't qualify for anything, unfortunately. But if you have an independent trucking company, I think you said, remember this, that the trucking company, if it has no wages, then look at doing the EIDL. That might be limited. Make sure you're paying attention to, are you getting to K1? And how does that come into play for you? Is if it's from a partnership, look at box 4, look at box 14, but probably more importantly, look at your individual tax return and figure out if you have a Schedule SE, because that's really your golden ticket at this point, as well as any 1099s.
Just opened a business January 13th of this year. I have 2 employees that are 1099. What should I do?
Yeah, so you're going to qualify for something. There's probably, it is intricate. So what I would do is get a hold of your bank because you do qualify, because one of the first qualification is, were you in business February 15th? The answer for you is yes. They do have a way to basically take what payroll you do have and annualize it out. Okay, but it's not just as simple as, I was in business for a month, here's my payroll, times 12, divided by 12, times 2.5. There's some other provisions related to that, okay? But the thing to know is that if you were in business February 15th and you have employees, you're going to qualify. The only reason I say get with your bank is that they may know first, okay, how you're going to qualify for that, because they're waiting for information from the SBA to help you determine that. So I think that answered it.
Yep. I did have somebody ask for questions being answered in the order that are posted. I'm trying my best, but unfortunately it won't let me scroll all the way back up to the very top anymore, and it's limiting me. So I am trying to go down the order though. So the next question is, last year was a bad year, and as a C Corp owner, I took no paycheck. Is there going to be any way to apply?
If you have no other wages, unfortunately, the answer is no. I tell you what, this is not, okay, wait, is the top the most recent?
I've got it going on.
Okay, okay, oh, okay, okay.
I am trying to.
Okay.
Okay, if your bank has a wait to call you back, would you start applying to other banks in the meantime?
Yes.
Any final guidelines on calculating payroll wages? Is it the last 12 months or 2019 calendar year for PPP max loan amount?
So the law is last 12 months. Some banks are allowing 2019. I think that's just out of simplicity, because you can just go by the W-3. What you would want to look at is, what is your specific bank saying? Because I've had banks come back to our clients and say, you did the last 12 months, we're not accepting that, we want 2019. So we've had to go and redo it, even though I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. So the real answer is last 12 months, period, the end. Somehow the banks are saying we're going to do the last, or we're going to do 19. So check with them. And then just make sure, quite frankly, listen, I'm not talking about playing any games here, and I know you know that. But if your bank is requiring you to go with 19, okay, see how that compares to the last 12 months. Because when you're sitting with the bank examiner, no two ways about it, it's going to be based on the last 12 months. So if you're going to go with 19, okay, how much of a difference is it? Because if it's significant, you might want to give them the information for 19, but say, I only want to apply for this amount. If that sounds funny, basically it would be, well, based on 19, I qualify for 67,000, but when I really look at my wages for the last 12 months, it would only be 65. So you don't have to apply for the max. You can just say, hey, I just want to apply for 65. So maybe the banks will start getting on the same page here. I think they were doing it to be nice, but in the end, it may hurt.
Have any of your clients dealt with Chase Bank regarding the PPP loan and received their loan or obtained more information regarding the loan queue process?
Yes. So the clients that I have that are with Chase, that have a bank account and a lending relationship, have successfully been able to submit give their documents to Chase, and then Chase has said, we have successfully submitted it. So I don't have any clients with any banks that they've been approved, which then also means I have not had anybody that has received any funds then, of course.
Will an owner who has student loan debt that is in default get an application denied? PPP application question number 2 worries me.
Okay, say it one more time, and then Lewis, I'm going to answer your question. I just happened to caught it out of the corner of my eye. So I don't know how to pronounce Lewis's last name, but I'll come to it. All right, so I'm going to pull up the application just to familiarize myself with it. But I know on number 2, it's if you mark it yes, then you can't apply for it, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. So they're asking about question 2.
Will an owner who has student loan debt that is in default get the application denied?
Okay, so I'll read you the question. It's on the PPP app. Has the applicant, any owner of the applicant, or any business owned or controlled by any of them, ever obtained a direct or guaranteed loan from SBA or any other federal agency that is currently delinquent or has defaulted in the last 7 years and has caused loss to the government? So it was a student loan. So if it's a student loan and it's in default, I think unfortunately it's going to preclude you from it. Now, I'm not talking about doing this to skirt around the system, because what you could do is explain the circumstances to your bank, not that they're going to do anything differently just because they know you and they are, going to hear the circumstances that you were under. but it might be worth still applying, because it may feel like it met the definition for you, but it may not actually meet the definition of this. So the thing to know is you can apply, they can submit it. Your bank may know a way to maybe check on that information before. So here's what I'm trying to say. Don't just take my answer, not apply. Talk with the bank, see if they can help you with it, because just because you're in those circumstances doesn't mean you don't deserve these funds, okay? Everybody's had circumstances in their lives, and life happens sometimes, and I do know overall they are trying to make sure that businesses are helped. So on Lewis said, JJ, you keep saying we will get 10K as a sole proprietor, but SBA just came out with the FAQ today saying we only get 1K per employee, and sole proprietor with no employees only gets 1K. Okay, well, so I've been on the phone nonstop, and was on another show, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for that. I had indicated initially that I had gotten comments about these limitations. So what Lewis is saying, which I guess I'll try and find it and see. But anyways, wow, it sounds like if you're a sole proprietor and you don't have any employees, you're getting 1K. It seemed as though the EIDL previously, it would help you with other expenses. So if you're in a circumstance where maybe you have other expenses, such as the rent or the utilities, don't get me wrong, that does not come into play with the PPP, but in the EIDL, it is a different kind of calculation. So thank you, Lewis.
If you have more than one company, can you apply for multiple PPP or EIDL?
Yes, and you will apply for them separately. On question, let's see. So on question, I think they changed the number. I think it's 3. Yeah. So question 3 on the PPP app says, is the applicant or any owner of the applicant an owner of any other business or have common management with any other business? If yes, list all businesses and describe the relationship on a separate sheet identified as Addendum A. So the reason it's asking for that is to then pull together and make sure that the affiliated group, okay, this common group, doesn't collectively have more than 500 employees. That's really the main reason. So some have interpreted it as, well, if I have multiple, I can't apply. So you would apply for under each EIN for each group of employees and its employment. And it is better to do it each. So I had a client that said, well, can we just do one application and get one loan? The problem with that is the one entity that gets the money, that EIN, okay, it's only based on its mortgage interest, its utilities, its rents. So you do want to get it separately. And so you would disclose it in number 3. And probably to help the bank, even though it doesn't say it, I would list how many employees, whatever entity you're going to list in that question 3 Addendum A. I'd just go ahead and say, here's how many employees it has, because that's really the purpose of it. Was that all to that question? Okay.
Do I need to back out the chapter 21, 22, or 24 taxes withheld? It was in the bill and in the interim final rule. The AICPA is saying to do gross payroll, but the banks have a line item to back it out.
So go to a different bank, and I say that with all due respect. If you look on my videos, and I'm going to answer your question, but if you look on the videos on my YouTube channel, let's see. Why is this only showing this? Bear with me for one second. I'm trying to do, and the reason I say, the reason I'm trying to go to this video so I can tell you what it is, because I went through and I've got 2 different videos. One is called PPP Payroll Cost Definitions for Borrowing Purposes and for Forgiveness. So the first thing to note is that there's a definition of wages when you borrow, and then there's a definition of wages when you're determining forgiveness, okay? And then I've got another one that says PPP fallacy on forgiveness. So here's where we're at on it. And if you go through and look at the PPP fallacy on forgiveness, yes, the rule or the act indicates chapters 21, 22, and 24. 21 talks about the Insurance Contribution Act. 22 is in essence related to the Railroad Act, which is like Social Security. Chapter 24 is talking about withholdings. The reason those three are in there is that it's in the definitions section. So if you go and you look at the law and you're looking at the section, and I'm going to pull it up just so I can read it to you briefly. You can't just stop at the definitions, okay? So the banks are in some ways just stopping at the definitions. So I'm going to the actual law, the actual CARE Act, and any kind of law, always the beginning section, they define every little solitary thing. And yes, in the definitions, it indicates that taxes imposed or withheld on, looking right there, taxes imposed or withheld under chapters 21, 22, the internal revenue during the covered period shall not be considered payroll costs. So you then have to go down to 1106, and it's the section of forgiveness. And then I walk through it in that video, but here is in essence the end result of that. If you take a payroll tax credit, so now let's go into the world of tax credits. We've been talking about PPP. So on the tax credits, we have now 4 different levels, right? We've got 3 different kinds out of the Families First Coronavirus, the 511 max a day, the 200 a max a day, okay, max 10 days. We have the third one, which is 200 max a day, maximum of 10,000 per employee. And then in the CARES Act, we have the new one, which is the employee retention, which is up to 50% of wages up to 10,000 per employee. So here's 4 credits. Here's how those credits are realized, okay? It's a reduction dollar for dollar of what you pay into the IRS. So stay with me on this one, okay? Because this is kind of like a long story problem, and then I'll bring it all the way home. When you're taking that tax credit, that credit, yes, is limited to employer Social Security tax. I'm just giving you the technical. But know this, when you're running a payroll, small business, and you have a $2,000 tax credit, it is clear in the law. We're talking about the Families First Coronavirus Act. It's clear in the law, okay, that credit can be offset against any tax imposed from chapter 21, 22, and 24, which means that whether the Social Security tax was withheld or matched, whether it was the Medicare withheld or matched, or even if it was the federal tax withheld, okay, that credit can offset all of those things, so the employer immediately is able to experience that. Now, if you fell asleep for a second, that's okay, because that was a lot, and that's full circle, and it's like, whoa, what? Because it's a 45-minute video to walk you through it. But now I'm taking it home for you. Let me take it home for you. Think of it this way. A tax credit means you didn't pay in the tax, okay? I got a $2,000 tax credit. That means I didn't pay in this tax. I didn't pay in $2,000. Okay. Now it's forgiveness time. You're walking in to talk with the bank examiner, which 100% of us that get a PPP will have to do. And you walk in and you go, hey, here's my payroll costs. Okay. And on my payroll costs, I only included the gross wages. But if I got a tax credit, okay, I have to reduce down that dollar amount of forgiveness. So if I give documentation and say, hey, my wages were 50 grand, okay, but I got a $2,000 tax credit, okay, for these other tax credits, then that 2,000 is going to subtract down, in essence, what is going to be forgiven. Now, why does this matter? And this is where, I mean, now for me, it's like, oh, wow, I think I really uncovered something here, right? The reason it matters is if it did not state what it stated, What would happen is when you would go and talk to the bank forgiveness time, you would say, whoa, 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 because I got a credit for $2,000. Okay. That credit was limited to the employer's Social Security tax for the year. So bank examiner, I appreciate you trying to say that this credit's not going to count, but the reason it's not going to count in terms of adjusting my forgiveness is it didn't affect what I had to pay for my PPP money. Get it? Meaning the credit offsets a tax that is not included in anything related to PPP. So what this is making clear is we don't care what tax it offset. If it was a tax from 21, 22, or 24, and you got a credit and it offset any of those taxes, you are not going to be able to consider that as part of loan forgiveness because, and now I'm bringing it all the way home, you didn't pay it in. You didn't pay in $2,000. You're not going to get credit that you paid $2,000. So there'll be more to come out on it, I'm sure. I go into the law, and I'm glad to say that any of these things that I've been going through, okay, once you start seeing it out and about and other people writing about it, I've not come across anything where I've been off base. Here's the deal. It does not affect, though, period, the end, the amount that you get, period, the end, if your bank is caught up on it. I love them. They're being conservative, but you just need to go to another bank unless they get off high center. But I will tell you this, the video that I did, I literally did it for a bank that was thinking that this was put together for the chairman of the board and the president of the bank. And then after they watched the video, they were like, you're on point, JJ, in the sense that makes sense to us now why we thought that. So PPP, payroll cost definitions, you might just let your bank watch it and see if it just helps them with their definition, because they're just trying to do the right thing.
Father passed in March of 2019, rental inherited, so formed trust to not interfere with SSDI and Medicare. Should I claim PPP?
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. That's terrible. And you might be dealing with things you haven't dealt with before. And I'm sure your father will be proud that you are setting up things the way that you have. And probably, I would say, any astute and great business person that's built up assets and real estate, and then to the extent where they're able to pass it on to their heirs and the next generation, would absolutely appreciate what you're doing. In my opinion, obviously I didn't know your father, but I think would appreciate what you're doing in terms of preserving what has been left as a legacy. And the only reason I say that is that I've heard some criticism for those that are in your industry or under your circumstances that you're not as deserving, or it shouldn't count, or you're not making payroll. So what I hear is you're in the real estate industry, you have rental property, you don't have wages, okay? So before I sat down to go live today, I would have said, go get yourself an EIDL because you would get 10K. It seems the SBA has come out today and has done the 1,000. You wouldn't qualify for the PPP because you don't have any wages. So from the perspective of what can you do if you're in a circumstance where you have rental property, anybody, and therefore you have loans, and you're now in a circumstance, you're like, wow, the EIDL got used quite a bit, so now I'm not going to probably really qualify for much there, maybe 1,000 in terms of money that will just be given and I don't have to pay back. I don't have wages, so I can't do PPP. When you own rental property, no two ways about it, you're not self-employed, so you can't go get PPP. When you own rental property, and I'm not trying to be a downer here, but when you own rental property, it's considered investment income, so to speak, and therefore you wouldn't be able to qualify for federal unemployment. So I'm not saying you're out in the dark, other than for right now, you're kind of out in the dark, and I hate to say it, but here's what I would do. Get a hold of the bank if you have notes. And most banks right now, like almost no questions asked, they'll put those notes on interest only. You might get in front of your renters, and you probably already are doing these things. So I'm just throwing out things that I've talked with clients about. Get in front of your renters if you think there's a risk that they may not be able to pay you for whatever reason. Maybe just immediately get with them, even though it might feel like a risk, to say, hey, where are you at right now? Would it help to do half now and half later? Are you getting some PPP money? Because I know that'll pay the rent. So if we need to wait a couple weeks. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand that someone may take advantage of that circumstance, so you have to be mindful of that. So sorry for your circumstances, and I'm sure your father would, I know your father would be proud, but I'm sorry there's not anything out of these to help you directly that I'm aware of.
We are a dental office. If we got approved for PPP but are unable to open our clinic due to Department of Health restrictions, how is that 8-week period being implemented?
Yeah, so a great question, and you're definitely not alone. That a lot of businesses are experiencing this crux, and this is actually the crux, right? I mean, what you just described is probably the crux, but for me as the tax guy, the crux here is this. You're getting money to pay your employees, but they're not working because we're all told, we need to stay home, right? Yesterday we need to wear, masks everywhere. And so when this CARES Act was being written and put into play, and I'm not talking politics at all, but our government, our president was saying, hey, let's try and be back by Easter, right? Which would be this coming Sunday, and we're not there. All to say, the 8 weeks is a little outdated. It might need to be that they change it to 12 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next week, or at least within a couple of weeks of you getting your PPP money, that they extend it, which I'm hoping that they do. The reason for the 8 weeks, as you probably all guessed, is so that you would get it into the economy, get it into the employees' hands. So the first thing to note is that when you're getting the PPP, what you're signing off on is that you're going to use it for payroll. The second part, though, is for you to qualify for the forgiveness, it has to be spent within 8 weeks. So the only reason I'm pointing that out is whether you spend it in the first 8 weeks or not doesn't affect your ability to get the loan. Okay, what it affects is your ability to get it forgiven. So I've had a number of conversations with clients where the questions have come up was like, I mean, I'm not trying to, this is the client. It's like, I'm not trying to be like mean or nothing, but like, I can't pay my employees right now. If I get the PPP, my business is closed. I don't have any revenue coming in. Let's say I do open in 6 to 8 weeks. I would then have the money if I get it now. But the problem is I haven't used it. Now I'm going to use it for payroll after the 8 weeks, but now I'm going to have to pay it back. And we have to remember as business owners that taking on the debt is, it's a risk. It's not a good situation. So one of two things. One, know this. As we know it now, you got the money to pay your employees, whether they're working or not, right? It sounds like a hardcore stance, but that's really what it comes down to. So whether you're home or not, whether at work or not, you're getting that money. It's to be paid to the employees in the first 8 weeks that you have it. And the biggest reason why that really this paycheck protection program's been put into play is so your employees don't go on unemployment. First of all, they're going to get more typically, right? They're going to get paid what they were getting paid. Obviously, that's up to you. But remember, if you let your employees go on unemployment, they may not come back. I mean, you may be the most loyal person ever, but now fast forward 2 weeks from now, they get their first unemployment check. It's not as much as they needed. Something else happens, something breaks down, the wash machine, now they don't have as much. And now they're cursing you as the employer that's been wonderful for them for 10 or 15 years and your family, and you hang out and everybody does the dirty Santa, white elephant around the holidays, okay? So what I would say is tread carefully with the employees' emotions, and don't get me wrong, dentists are wonderful employers like everybody else, but they're also usually very non-controversial employers as well, meaning they want everybody to be happy. So that's a really long way of saying, based on what we know now, if you want it forgiven, when you get the money, you need to start spending it on the payroll, whether you're open or not. What you can do is as another option is you could hold on to the money, your employees go on unemployment, but the problem is now you're going to have to pay that money back. I would wish I could say, so maybe hold off, but the money could run out. So I don't think you should hold off. So here's really what you should do. Get the money, get your application in and get your money, and it can just sit there. Okay. It can sit there and you can pay it back at the end. So if you never use it, you pay it back, ollie oxen free, here you go. Okay. And the reason you could hold on to it, okay, is that you're going to probably eventually need it. You're going to need it for rent. You're going to need it for utilities. You might be back in business in 4 weeks. So you're going to need it then in those 4 weeks. If you get past the 8 weeks, maybe they've come back and said, well, you know what, we're going to extend it to 12. So I've been just telling clients now, most of my clients are my size, right? We're less than 10 employees, right? I mean, the average loan of my clients right now is somewhere around, $75,000. Okay. So I'm not telling these clients that are getting $1 million, like, hey, if you don't think you need it, just go ahead and do it. But for a small business, 75K is make or break. And if you go to my website, which doesn't require any email, no contact info, I don't even know that you visited it, but I have a page in there, and then we'll go to the next question. But I have a page in there that is called, let's see, it's called Guide. And on the guide page, it's JJ's Survival Guide. Put this together weeks ago, well before we got to here. But I just have a worksheet in there that talks about your cash value, and it's relevant to this question. What is not cash value? What is your cash position going to be in 3 weeks? And now what's my cash position going to be in 3 weeks now that I have PPP money? Because where you're going to be in 3 weeks then kind of determines what's the next 5 weeks going to look like for you. Because at this point, you're 8 weeks in. So it's a survival guide. I promise you don't enter in an email address to get the PDF document. It's just free. I have a video that goes with it. I have a worksheet that I created that walks you through, like, what do you do to try and figure out what your cash position is going to be in 3 weeks, and a video to go along with it.
Just letting you know, if you want to tell people you're going to be doing this every day at 4 o'clock this week, and that we're at 90 minutes. So
okay. So yeah, I'll be doing this 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. For those of you that were here at that time, I really apologize. Just shout out to Facebook Marketing Ninja. He invited me on the show. He was talking about me and my YouTube channel in terms of just helping people, which I was just honored. And he had me on his show. And we were supposed to go 45 minutes because I said I needed to go live at 4. And then we said, we'll go to 4. And there were still 80 people on his Zoom call and more on Facebook with questions. And so finally at 4:30, I said, well, I made a commitment. I want to get over there. So those of you that have jumped over, I really appreciate it. And then, if you haven't subscribed, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If anything, just so that you get some notifications of when things come out, because like last night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I really couldn't sleep. I felt bad because I hadn't gotten to a lot of questions. And so I'm laying in bed answering questions, as many as I can, fell asleep 3 times. I copied and pasted something that didn't make any sense in somebody's answer. So all that to say, yes, we'll go live every day. We're at 90 minutes, but let's just keep going. This is high demand. There may not be, everybody has the same demand later.
Wait, what date does one use to establish employee headcount on PPP application? Headcount as of 2/15/20, asking because it will determine loan forgiveness, and I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah. I don't have a good answer for that because I've not come across that, but I am going to, let's go to the next question, and I'm going to pull up that guidance because that the SBA put out on Friday. And if somebody knows, feel free to put it on the comments because I just haven't had time, it sounds funny, to actually look for that, even though I meant to.
Wouldn't unemployment still be more lucrative unless you're really making a lot of money, since unemployment lasts longer than 10 weeks than the 10 weeks for PPP?
Yeah, it does depend on, of course, what the employees are making. With state unemployment, y'all probably know this. It does depend on, what you're making. There's kind of a max in Oklahoma. What's the weekly max? It's like 450.
478.
478 is the max per week, but that's someone making hefty. If you have someone that's making, $12 an hour, it's probably, maybe a couple $100 a week.
70%.
Maybe a couple of bucks a week. So good point. Don't get me wrong. The federal unemployment that's put into play is there to help overall, especially with the businesses, small businesses that can't keep employees on payroll. And they may not even be able to borrow enough, so to speak. I know that you brought up a great point. It's 8 weeks that you have to spend. You had mentioned 10 weeks, but it's 8 weeks. And then the federal unemployment benefits, you can get up to 39 weeks. You can get it immediately, even if your state has a week waiting period. And when your state runs out, your state benefits run out, the federal benefits can last another 13 weeks, not to exceed 39 weeks overall. It is up to $600 a week. I don't think it's just $600 a week. It's up to. So what you have to look at is to what Amanda just said, is that typically unemployment benefits is going to be in Oklahoma. If we were to extrapolate it, 70% of what somebody earns. And the terrible thing about it is that would be okay if unemployment benefits were not taxable, but unemployment benefits are taxable. And so it puts you in a spot, or your employees in a spot. But here's the deal. If you're a small business and your employees are not going to be able to go back to work, you're not going to be able to open up within that 8-week period, you could get the money and pay your employees. Now you are running the risk on headcount, which we're going to still try and solve here. You're running risk on headcount, because what if you pay all those employees in the 8 weeks, you meet every qualification, but by the time you hit June 30, you don't have any employees to count in your headcount, and now you're sitting where you're not going to be able to get that loan forgiven. So there's a real risk. I wish that it would be that there's not this headcount on June 30. Now there's 3 factors to look at, and we're going to have to do some additional videos on that, but that's where the crux comes in. As I said earlier, is are you in a situation where you feel like you're going to be open in 8 weeks, so go ahead and get the employees paid now. But when you're looking at unemployment benefits, I've been encouraging, so I've been telling my clients, don't put them on unemployment. Just don't do it. Just wait, or give them an advance that they can work off later, pay them something, pay them all, get your tax credits. The PPP came along. I'm like, hey, just go ahead and get the PPP. Go ahead and pay your employees. Even if you're not open, that's what it's there for. Just pay the employees. Then you're not going to be in a situation. But with my clients, other than the 3, they're in the type of industry that they will be coming back. They will be opening their doors again. All right, what's the next one? I'm still trying to find this head count because I want to solve that as well.
I'm a sole practical, whatever. I had 0 employees. I filed a Schedule C. I was forced to shut down. I need to know which program I qualify for and how to make sure the money is forgiven.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry about that. Can you tell me this? There is Schedule C and no employees?
Yeah.
Okay. So Schedule C, no employees. You're going to qualify for the PPP. Go to Schedule SE on your individual return, because that's going to be your amount that you will be able to use for your PPP. That amount divided by 12 times 2.5. Now make sure if you have a retirement plan, you're including retirement aspect there. Your health insurance is included, as well as, well, that's it, because you're not going to have state unemployment tax. So be sure you're including that. And then self-employed individuals do qualify for federal unemployment tax. I've not come across anything yet that when you get PPP money, how does that affect a self-employed individual getting federal unemployment? But here's what I'd say. Don't worry about it now. get your numbers together. April 10th, this Friday, is the first time that you're going to be able to apply for it. So get your Schedule C. If you get 1099s, gather those up. Get your Schedule SE. Probably should go ahead and have your financials. Talk to your bank to make sure they're going to be doing them with self-employed individuals, and get your application in on the PPP. When the federal unemployment rolls out, then when you go to figure out if you qualify for that, you'll know, because through the qualifying process and the questions, which I've not seen yet, it may be that because you got PPP, it's going to affect what you get for federal unemployment. But if I had to guess, it would just be a dollar for dollar offset. It wouldn't be, well, because I got PPP, now I'm not getting any federal unemployment. It may be that if you get PPP, it's supposed to cover you for 8 weeks. So it might be that you wouldn't be able to get unemployment, but for after 8 weeks. I don't know that. That's my hunch right now, and I'm hoping, and I guess we got some guidance today on the SBA, so I definitely need to take a look at that and see if there's anything added to that. What's next?
What's the definition of keeping a level workforce? Is it the exact number of employees before and after the disaster?
So level workforce, I mean, in a perfect world, it would just be, what your head count was, which we're going to solve here on your application. And that's your head count at the end. You're golden. The reason they have these comparisons of the head counts, in my opinion, is if it's different from when you applied, right? So if your head count's this, and then your head count's different at the end, then there's these other periods of time in the prior year, like February 15th to June 30 in the prior year, as an example. So level workforce, when you look at the tax law and you look at 1106, and I keep saying this because I've been getting through the process of helping get information out there about how to get the PPP loan, et cetera. And then it's going to start shifting to, okay, everybody's got their money now. What do we need to do, and how do we track and get the loan forgiveness, et cetera? But when you're looking at 1106, it goes by head count, doesn't say employee for employee, and it does go for dollar amount. It doesn't say this employee and this employee. So level workforce would be, in just to try and simplify it, if for the entire period, these covered period, and whatever's compared to the last time, if you had 8 employees and you were spending $10,000 a month, and no matter what, no matter when we looked, you had 8 employees and you were spending $10,000 a month, whether it was these employees or those employees, I don't think you have any issue, because the thing here is it's meant to not promote someone expanding their business. It's meant to keep the same amount of workforce employed during this era. So if you don't meet those numbers, there's a margin of error of 25%. On the dollar aspect, there's a margin of error, not error. There's a margin of like, okay, well, you did that, it was good enough. So we'll have to get to the videos on that as it relates to the head count, because at first glance, it seemed like both things were 25%, but doing a head count at 25% sometimes isn't going to work out to very even math. But know this, the first and foremost is, did you spend it on payroll? Okay. And no one, you can give people a raise, but it's not going to go towards the raise. And that's really the main thing here. And if you're looking for the number one way to make sure it's forgiven, is to just spend it on payroll. Okay. So if you hear me, what I'm saying is, if you got 5 employees and you're down to 4, you can't just go, well, I'll just pay more to the 4 employees, so I spend it all on payroll. What you look at is, I've got 5 employees, but here's what I'm spending. I'm going to keep spending that. Okay. Which means that you're replacing. So they talk about replacement and then rehire, and it's at the same dollar amount. So don't get me wrong. This is going to be a little bit of it'll be why we took high school math to calculate that aspect of it. So get the money and pay the employees and let the chips fall where they may, because it's still a long time from now. And I do think it's just a hunch that they'll give us more than 8 weeks.
Can a two-person C Corp owner who has no payroll service and pulls a monthly salary draw, not dividends, apply for PPP?
It was a C Corp?
Yep.
So unfortunately, if you don't have any wages, then you just won't be able to, whether it's on yourself or to your employees. Dividends is investment income. It's actually portfolio income to boot. Distributions would be out of an S Corp, which is in essence a return of capital. It's representing. So unfortunately, no, you wouldn't be able to get the PPP. And now it sounds like with the EIDL, if you don't have any employees, you wouldn't qualify, excuse me, for that as well. I'm going to be interested to look at the new rules as it relates to real estate, though, because they typically don't have employees anyways.
God still, sir, and I've seen your recommendation, and I will talk to JJ about that. He said make a suggestion for live shows to have 1 day PPP questions, 1 day EIDL, 1 day, to not make this all over the place as much. So, these are all kind of all over the place, sorry. We already talked about landlords and stuff, and he's already answered the questions. I do see some more of them coming in, so you guys make sure that you tune back in and rewatch this. It will be up, so that way he's not having to repeat the same questions, so we can try to get to everybody. What is the break even over 48,000 if you took the EIDL and want to apply for the PPP?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's like a whole new ball game now on this EIDL. I'll probably have to look at my videos and determine if any of them need retraction because this morning I just haven't had time to get to it. I've been back to back with helping my clients get their PPPs. The 48,000, okay, before when I sat down, was because you could get 10,000 with the EIDL. Now there's limitations. So on the EIDL, so 1,000 an employee sounds like a limitation here. And so if you're not going to get very much out of the EIDL, then it's almost like, well, then you're going to get more out of the PPP. So you should go that direction. Was that the question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know we still need to do the head count one. I do have earlier, I don't know if Hank is still on. Hank, you have a great question here. I've got a episode that I'm releasing after this where Justin McAuliffe, myself, and he's a CPA out of New York. CPA JMac is his code name on Instagram. But anyways, yesterday we shot 3 episodes of something we've been talking about doing for about 6 months, and it's called the CPA Show. He and I are CPAs, and we're going to bring on a guest each week that is a CPA. It's different than the show I have, JX4, with Justin and Juan. All to say, Hank, watch the CPA show, because we talk about it at length, and one of the CPAs that comes on with us, Sean Goodman of the Goodman CPA Group out of the tri-state area, is on with it. He was convinced, and then he's maybe not as convinced, and maybe he's convinced. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But here's the question. Law rule seems to read that salaries in payroll costs is limited to $100K per employee. So that'd be salary plus SUTA plus health plus retire. Like your Excel sheet, revised all caps, the total formula at 100 per employee. Your thoughts? So that's why I have a disclaimer on my worksheet. Thank you for looking at it, Hank. This is my absolute, without a doubt, determination or conclusion. And it's how I did it on mine as well, okay? And it's this. When you read what the SBA put out yesterday, which is not necessarily hold any weight per se, it is consistent with what is in the law. And the SBA put out yesterday saying, here are some examples of how to determine the loan, right, which is based on the payroll cost. So when we look at that, I'm trying to get to it so I can read it to you. Okay, wait, there it is. All right, it says in what the SBA, which, you know, when SBA provides this, it doesn't hold any weight. I don't, and I'm not even saying that with any insult to the SBA. It's just the fact. But it says right here, how do I calculate the maximum amount I can borrow? Okay. And it says, here it is. Step 1, aggregate payroll costs defined below in F. So when I go down to F in this SBA, it says, what are payroll costs? And it lists everything out that you just listed here, which is the salaries, the wages, commissions, cash tips equivalent, right? Vacation, parental, family, medical, sick leave, allowance, health coverage, okay? The insurance premiums, the retirement, the state unemployment tax, okay? It says nothing in there about 100 limit on that amount. When you go back up and you then look at each one of their examples, and they have in this guidance 4 different examples. What they start out with is take your total payroll costs and then back out 100,000, more than 100,000 in annual salary. Now, whether you call it wages or salary, but it's saying salary, annual salary, 100K. And that is consistent with what we see in the law. So in the law, in the very beginning of the act in section 1102, when you go and you look and it says, what are payroll costs? And it is very similar to what we just saw, which is it's the sum of all of those expenses. It's not paying attention at all yet to any limitations. And then down in the definitions, it said it shall not include the compensation of an individual employee in excess of an annual salary of 100K. Okay. Well, salaries do not include a retirement match. Salaries do not include employer paid retirement, period. It does not. Okay. Salaries do not include the retirement match. Salaries are salaries. So the salaries are limited to 100. So without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, it's 100,000 in the salary plus these other expenses. Now, as a side note, I'll share with you that the employer match would be based on 100,000 of salary. So, you know, if the salary is capped at 100, then the employer match based on 250,000 isn't going to be all allowed. It'd be the employer match based on the 100,000. I'm still looking for the head count thing for the individual that had that question.
Can I pay myself slightly more if I've lowered my own S Corp owner salary in the last few months to take full advantage of the PPP?
Yes, because, you know, we're looking at the last 12 months. And so, you know, when you're doing a comparison, you're trying to meet what you've done in the past, right? So if you're not giving yourself a raise, you're just moving yourself back to what you were paying, then I think you're fine. Now, the ultimate judge of that is going to be the bank examiner that you're sitting in front of. Worst case, they say, well, I see that your pay was this, and then it went to this, so the increase is not going to count. But when you look at the documentation that you're submitting, and I'm not saying, well, because they're not going to see the detail, then do whatever the heck you want. I'm not saying that at all. But when you look in 1106, it's about total payroll. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think you could let an employee go and pay yourself more and find yourself and say, oh, well, see, I'm spending the same amount of money, because where that wouldn't work is that you also have to take into account the head count. The bottom line is you work hard. There's nothing wrong with paying you what you deserve. And you can pay yourself whatever you want. In terms of the forgiveness part, it may only affect that, but you need to make money. You need to pull it out. I would say this, though, you know, remember the old adage with an S Corp, you know, whatever you don't pay is not subject to payroll tax. So if you've been paying distributions, that's not subject to it. So the IRS would, and here's why I'm just saying it, the IRS would not argue with you increasing your wages, because you're also increasing what is subject to payroll taxes. So the long and short of it is, if you're just putting yourself back in the position that you were in, then I think you're going to be fine.
And I'm seeing a lot of comments. This is like the 6th question of you guys asking what JJ's thoughts are about the letter that was sent from the senators to the SBA. He has not been able to look at anything today, so I don't believe that he is aware of this letter. So he will look at it and see. I don't even know what it is. We haven't had we've been going nonstop since 7 a.m. this morning. So I apologize that we can't answer that question, but it keeps getting asked.
I tell you what, we'll do a video on it tonight. There probably wouldn't be a full analysis, but if I can. Okay, what's the next one? I'm still working on the head count question.
I have a C Corp and I always pay a yearly bonus. The bonuses were used in my monthly averages. Will I not be able to use those for my forgiveness?
So you did properly include them in the loan amount. You know, right now, I would just say whatever you are customarily doing, continue to do. Now, I get if you had a bonus, you know, at the end of the calendar year, you're not going to have a bonus by the end of this calendar year. So it may very well be, and then I don't mean it like you did anything wrong, but it very well may lead to you not having as much forgiven because you're not going to have as much to pay. So don't do this right off the bat, but if you're working with somebody that knows your particular circumstances, because this would be tough to answer in general, but it might be appropriate that if you were to take this 8-week period, and if you were to say, well, here was last year's bonus, and if I divided that by 52 times 8, that bonus is kind of like, well, this is kind of what a bonus would be allocated out per week for 8 weeks. I'm talking out of thin air on this one. But if you had a rationale for it, it's reasonable, and you're in essence including in the 8-week period the amount that is consistent with what your loan number is, then I think that you have a better chance of getting it somewhat forgiven. But then remember this, if you don't have enough payroll, and so you don't spend it all, you can just give it back in the sense of just, we're going to know more in 8 weeks and in 10 weeks and in 11 weeks. Now, of course, we need to know what it is before you hit your 8 weeks, but I feel like we're going to know more. So I wouldn't do anything until we know more. I think, though, you know, the fact is that it does say in 1102, it mentions all these things. It includes all these things, and what it's taking into account. The law is that when it says sick leave and all this good stuff, well, how do you know? I mean, people aren't going to be, and I'm talking regular sick leave, people aren't going to necessarily be in the same circumstances, you know, in those upcoming weeks. So just tread lightly, and if you feel good about it, then it's, you know, in your heart, you feel good about it. Then that's probably your first indicator that it's probably going to work itself out. But, you know, banks, I'm being facetious, they don't have hearts. The people do, but they don't have hearts. All right, next question.
And the gentleman that you're working on head count stuff said, on my own question on head count, what I found doesn't exactly answer the question, but implies a logical answer. 1 PPP fact sheet, see page 3, PPP IFRN final, see pages 6, 17, and 21, but the bank disagrees. So.
Okay, hang on. I got it. That's what I've been looking through. Thank you. So tell me the page numbers. 6,
17, 21.
6. All right. So let me look here. See, you were in operation on February and either had employees for whom you paid salaries in payroll and paid contractors. It's interesting. It says paid independent contractors. You're eligible for a PPP. Yeah, I probably on 6, I don't know that it directly answers. And the question that we're resolving here, And here's what I did is I put the number of employees I had on February 15th is the same number of employees I had now. It's the same number of employees I had at the end of the year. So I didn't lose too much heartburn on it. What I told my clients is, what is your head count right now? But I didn't have any clients that hasn't let anybody go yet. So that's, I was giving advice to my clients knowing the circumstances. That's why I didn't get too caught up. I said, well, let's just count it up now because you haven't made any changes since then. But if you have made changes, I understand that it's going to be very important for you to put down your head count, because also we know that there's, full-time equivalents. It was at 6 and then 17.
6, 17, 21.
Okay. I'll spend a couple more minutes on this and we'll go to the next question. Okay, certifications. So if you follow along, this is in that PPP IFRN final, came from the SBA. What certifications need to be made to the bank? That the applicant had employees. There's uncertainty. The funds will be used for workers. As explained, not more than 25% will be used for non-payroll. Okay, documentation verifying the number of full-time equivalent employees on payroll as well as dollar amount of payroll costs, blah, 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 will be provided to the loaner. Well, it doesn't say the date. During the beginning of the period, ending, applicant will not, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't matter. And then it said 24?
21.
21. Okay. Yeah. I would probably, absent seeing anything clear in here and just going by reasonableness, right? So, because I travel around and I talk to CPAs across the nation on behalf of the most awesome company that provides continuing education, Surgent to CPA. So I'm in front of CPAs 8 hours, and think of that crowd in the sense of these are peers. These are people that are coming to these seminars that know as much as me or maybe more, or et cetera, et cetera. And so if I were to throw this out as a question to a group of CPAs and we were to look at it, we would probably go with the lowest head count. Now, there may be some clarification that came out today, but I would go with the lowest head count on the last day of the pay period that you're including. So if you're including payroll through 12/31/19, what was your head count there? Now, hang on, I'm going to say the lowest of a couple of options. What was your head count at 12/31/19 if you're using calendar year wages? If you're doing the last 12 months, what was your head count on 3/31, which is the last day of the period you're using there? What's your head count on February 15th, which is when the covered period starts? And what's your head count on the day that you're making application? I would put the lowest number, not for a game or trying to cheat out the system, but given that it's absent of a clarity. Here's all these effective dates. It's my payroll's through this date. We have a February 15th. I have the date that I am putting in application. And so I would just say, to be prudent, I would just go with the lowest head count number. And at the end of the day, check. If your bank's saying they disagree, have them explain why. It's kind of like when you're talking to your teenager, right? And they want to know why. Don't let your bank just say, "'Cause I told you so," right? Let them give you a reason. All right, I got a question here while you're looking for another. What if I'm a full-time employee for a small business, but I do side work as a videographer for a church and get paid on 1099? Am I eligible for EIDI and unemployment? Well, we're learning today that you really wouldn't get anything out of EIDI. On the unemployment, the answer is yes. It would be twofold. You would get it as an employee, but you would also get it in determining what your net was on your 1099 income as a videographer. If you've been holding it out as a business and putting it on Schedule E, I'm sorry, Schedule C, I think you could also apply for a PPP for your videographer activities because you have 2 roles. Oh, okay, hang on. Someone said, as of today, NEHS, as of today, Bank of America removed the requirement to have a credit card for PPP. So that's good news. Thanks for letting us know. Okay, let's see. I've been supporting 4 employees. I think these are from the beginning. I've been supporting 4 employees, even though they are sitting at home for the last 4 weeks. Can I use the PPP money to reimburse this back? Unfortunately, no, because it's spent during the 8 weeks. You're awesome for doing that. I hope your employees, and I'm sure they do, but I really hope they understand that for small business owner, they're using their resources. And I'm not even saying the employees don't deserve it, right? I'm in the same circumstance. My employees have come in when they needed. We're considered essential in the state of Oklahoma. My employees live less than a mile from the office. We lock the front door. We don't let anybody in. Everybody works in their own offices with the door shut. I bought gloves a long time ago. No one touches each other's documents without it sitting there for 24 hours. No one's working full time. It's only as needed. And so we've been working in shifts. All to say, Roselle LLC, I hope your employees appreciate it the way that I know my employees do, because we could just say, hey, I need you to go collect unemployment. But let me tell you this, a couple things. One, unfortunately as well, the IRS came out last week and said for the tax credits, it's on wages on April 1st or after, because before that, I'd say, hey, take some tax credits on that. So we're not going to be able to get that. What I would do though is, and what I had recommended in, this website I told you all about, if you're just on, the website is free. And when I mean free, you don't put in an email address to get access for free. There's no later seminar. There's no books to sell. There's no program. I don't have a secret Facebook site that you get to spend, $4.95 to be on. It's a completely free website. But in that, I give some examples in the page that's about planning. And it's kind of like, what should you do, right now as a small business owner? Talking about the payroll. And all I'm saying is this, I haven't gotten to this point yet, but depending on the amount of payroll, et cetera, I think it's okay to say, I'm not going to put you on unemployment. You aren't working. I'm going to go ahead and advance you what your net pay would be. Okay. And there's no problems with the IRS on this because they're not working, but in essence, you're giving them an advance. And why does that matter? The first thing is, if it's an advance, and let's be clear, I'm not talking about somehow later in life you find a way to pay your employees with an advance to avoid payroll tax. You can't do that. But if your employee is not working, you can pay in advance. And then what happened? You as the employer do not need to come up with right now the Social Security and Medicare match and withheld, the federal withholdings, right? Because they're not working. And the other benefit of doing it in advance is that you can say, hey, I want to keep paying you. I'm going to keep paying you, but here's how we're going to do it. You've been home for 4 weeks. I'm going to pay you in advance, which just means that I need you to slowly work it off even over the next year, right? So what does that mean? They're going to make their same pay, but if you advance them $1,000 or $2,000, then maybe every payroll period, in essence, they're paying you back for that. There's $50 to $100, withheld. Now, from an employee standpoint, they may say, well, that's not fair. But from an employer standpoint, I would say, well, it's not fair that you're at home and you're still getting paid. And I can understand, well, it's not fair though, because we have the coronavirus, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, the business owner's not your mom or dad in every circumstance. They have a family to be responsible to as well. They have responsibilities. Everybody has responsibilities. So it's a way that maybe your employee can help carry the load a little bit. Employees don't have the same wherewithal. And the reason I'm even suggesting that is that this was a way that I told my clients, don't let your employees go. Give them in advance. Say, hey, I'll loan you some money. And I don't mean because you are, what am I trying to say? Not to make the employee feel bad, right? But to say, how about we do this? Instead of payroll, I'm going to advance you some dollars because you're not working. So I don't need to pay you. Okay. So I'm going to advance you some dollars and then you can work it off later. Now, if you have an employee and they're already not happy with you and they're going to be sneaky, they might be able to say, oh, well, you just fired me. And you can say, well, no, I didn't fire. So my point is, this isn't going to work in every scenario, but if you have a tight knit family, that feels like family small business, what is the benefit to you as the employer in doing that? You're not having to come up with the Social Security and the Medicare and the withholdings right now. What's the advantage to your employee? They're getting money, okay? What's the other advantage to the employer? They're working it off. There's nothing wrong with an employee that got paid money that then either has to pay a little bit back every payroll period, which I'm sure that they would be happy to do. I think on that head count, we just don't have a true answer. And I think where I'm at on it without further guidance is the lower of the last day of the payroll period that you're using to get your loan, February 15th or the day of application, I would use the lowest head count.
If someone is still in the middle of having an audit worked out from 2017 and 18, would they have any issues applying for a PPP or the EIDL?
No. And even if you owe money, it definitely doesn't interrupt the stimulus checks.
Great job, Amanda. Thank you.
That's right.
Is it okay to apply in 2 different banks?
I'm going to say no. What I would do is, if you have an established banking relationship and they're not moving fast enough and you want to consider another bank, go talk to the other bank, have full disclosure. Because the banks are going to make 5%. So they're doing you a favor, but not really. Don't get me wrong, they should get paid. They're going to be work for them on the tail side. So you don't need to go hat in hand and say, hey, gee golly, will you do my loan? They're going to pick up 5%, whatever is going to be paid to you. But I would go to the other bank and just say, hey, I think I want to move my loan over to you if I could. Now, don't think you're doing them a favor either, okay? It's kind of an equal trade here is what I'm getting at. Don't act like you're doing them some big favor and they shouldn't act like they're doing you some big favor. Just doing business, right? They got a hot dog, you're going in to buy it and you're paying the price, okay? Point is, you will have some problems if accidentally they both go in, like fraudulent problems. So get with that bank, get them all the info, and if they're like, man, this looks really good, where does the original bank stand? Okay. And if they're not where you want it to be, then you need to pull the plug, but make sure, think of your bank as a girlfriend or a boyfriend. You don't want to have two at the same time. You got to cut ties with one of them. All right. I do want to, there's one here. It says, Scott, as a church, we include housing as part of a pastor's salary package and list it in W-2 box 14. Can we include this as wages, salaries, or similar compensation? I got guidance on that, and I've not been able to read it. That came out, or I think it was guidance from somebody that it helps me get some information. And box 14 is basically other information. Typically, box 14 is going to represent information that was in box 1, 3, or 5. But if box 14, which I understand is for the pastor, which includes the housing allowance, is considered compensation to the minister, They are only taxed on it. I'm talking it out loud. They're only taxed on it for federal income tax purposes to the extent that they don't use the money they receive for qualified housing allowance, but the entire housing allowance, unless they opt out of Social Security, when you could do that, is subject to self-employment tax. I'm going to go with yes, because that is considered compensation. And although it potentially is not subject to income taxes, it is if the pastor doesn't use it. It's definitely subject to self-employment tax. And that's really the key here, in my opinion, is that because that amount is subject to self-employment tax, then I believe it would be something that can be included. But here would be the real question to make sure. So just ask your bank, is that, would it be that the pastor would apply because the pastor's the one that has a self-employment earnings, and then they get a PPP based on their self-employment earnings? It's kind of 6 1/2, right? It's either included up top or it's included down there. If someone were to say, without knowing anything else, without seeing any other guidance, what would you choose, JJ? Have the pastor do it personally or include it at the church? I would say include it at the church level because it's in the W-2. Now, hopefully we don't read guidance and it tells us the complete opposite, but because it's in the W-2, that's why I would do it at the church level.
Okay.
We got Leith Lambert. First off, congratulations on being the best CPA out there. Thank you so much. Sole proprietor opened up January 13th of this year and has 2 employees that are 1099. What can I do before I have to close permanently? Well, shoot, Leith, I'm sorry that you're in those circumstances. The first thing to note is that I think you're already gathering it, but unfortunately, you won't be able to get a PPP based on what it is that you're paying those two. You're calling them 2 employees, and I know that's a common term, but for IRS and tax purposes, they're not employees. They're just 1099. So the good news is that those 2 can go get a PPP. Sounds like the EIDL is a flush now, but they can go get a PPP. So that should help them, and it's good to tell them that they can do that. And then if you're the sole proprietor, whatever you netted, you can get a PPP. And as long as you were in business on February 15th, and you'd have to prove that. One way to prove it is, did you have a bank account that was in the business name before then? Did you get a DBA? Just what could you do to prove you were in business? And then you would probably need to present to the bank a profit and loss statement of, what did you make? What were your expenses in this period of time? If you're saying January 13th, I'm assuming 2020. And I get it. It probably is not going to be a lot, quite frankly, because you've only been in business for a small period of time. So the approach I would take is letting your 1099 people know there's a PPP out there. And then you qualify for federal unemployment as a sole proprietor, and they qualify for federal unemployment as sole proprietors. So maybe if you all can stay afloat and you're able to help them get access to some of these things, then that might be able to help.
I can't find any information about single and partner 50/50 LLCs that take owner draws with no employees and only 1099 workers. The Chase PPP form won't let me enter 0 as my number of employees, but we are partners 50/50 LLC who takes owner draws with only 1099 workers. Do I list us members/owners as employees then?
The way that we know it now is, I'm going to assume you're filing a partnership return, and the final analysis may be that you list yourself as employees, but it would be dead wrong to do that, okay? Because you're not an employee and you've never been able to be an employee, because you can't be an employee and be a partner of a partnership. But what I do believe is that you would be able to file as the self-employed individual. It would be based on your K-1, look to Schedule SE on your individual tax return and see if you previously have been paying self-employment tax on that K-1. The reason distributions and draws won't count is that it's in a partnership, it's just a return of capital and or representing net income that you had previously. If your box 1 on your K-1 has never been subject to self-employment tax, which you would know by looking at box 14, you're not going to be in a circumstance where you're able to include that. The EIDL sounds like it's a big loser now. And I don't mean to say it that way. I just mean that, like, I'm disappointed because it was, put it in and you got 10 grand. But it sounds like now it's going to be very little. So I'd get on the stick and be ready to go, because it's this Friday, April 10th, when you are able to apply for the PPP.
When we pay ourselves with PPP funds in order to match our usual salary, we will have roughly the same amount of federal taxes taken out. When time for forgiveness, do they count the tax we paid?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I feel like I did a lot of research on it. And so my conclusion is whatever we pay gross will be included in the forgiveness as long as it was spent in the 8 weeks. We spent at least 75% of the PPP money on the payroll, and our head count and the dollars spent were all even, meaning in a perfect world, you meet all those qualifications, okay? The federal withholding, the state, the federal, the Social Security, and the Medicare will not penalize us. And so go to the video called PPP Fallacy on Forgiveness, where I really break it down and conclude in a very confident way by looking at the law. And here's why, is this: when you are taking tax credits on the payroll, those payroll tax credit reduces down all of these taxes that are in 21, 22, and 24, the chapters of the Internal Revenue Code, okay? And when it lists, even in the SBA, it says payroll costs do not include withholdings, Social Security, Medicare, the employee's portion or the employer's portion. Is just a definition, okay? You go to 1102 and you look at it, you look at the definition. And, I've been doing this long enough that I expect when I'm looking at the law or the tax code that I got to figure out all the definitions, like what do all these things mean? But now I have to look at the law to see how to apply all these definitions. So we can't stop with, well, the definition of a payroll cost is this, and this is not included in a payroll cost, so boom, it's not included in a payroll cost. It's just not that straightforward, okay? When you look down in the section of forgiveness, what it's talking about is that if those taxes have been withheld or paid and you've received a credit to offset these, okay, that credit is going to reduce down your loan forgiveness, even though it paid on things that aren't even included in this PPP. And the reason for that is that when you get a tax credit on your wages, it only is to the extent of Social Security at the employer's level, which is not even a part at all of PPP. So they're wanting to avoid some really smart, CPAs and tax attorneys that come forgiveness time to say, hey, listen, that tax credit will not affect your loan forgiveness, because that tax credit was only to the extent of the employer's Social Security. So therefore, that credit shouldn't count. And that's wrong. That's wrong. The full amount, if you look at the law, of that credit, even though it reduced down other things besides the Social Security at the employer portion, has to be reduced down on your loan forgiveness. So no way, no how, not possible, not in a million years is the government going to say, here's $100, you got to go spend it on your employees in the next 8 weeks. And by the way, we're only going to forgive the net check that you give them. No, doesn't make sense. And I know that the banks are looking at it, and they're looking at it literal. So all I would encourage is you got to look beyond the definitions. You can't just look at definitions and then draw your conclusions. Look at the definitions and then apply it. All right. Go ahead.
No, just saying I'm seeing a lot of repeat questions, things that's already been addressed. So make sure that you do tune in to rewatch this video. So you may just want to keep that in mind for letting people rewatching, just so it's easier for them to find questions and you're not answering the same question.
Okay, Sarah has, yeah, thank you. Sarah has, is contracted labor paid to be included as wages for a sole proprietor for the PPP? So let me say this. If you're the sole proprietor, okay, and what you've been paid, you're the independent contractor, then that can be included in you going and getting a PPP. If you're paying an independent contractor, that does not get to be included in your calculation of what you get to go borrow. You got one?
Can S-Corp distributions count as payroll expenses for PPP? If not, can I increase my W-2 to $99,000?
Sorry, what? Say it one time.
Can S-Corp distributions count as payroll expense for PPP? If not, can I increase my W-2 to $99,000?
Distributions for sure don't count. It's considered a return of capital and or representative of your net income. It's never taxed in any way, shape, or form. So distributions definitely won't count. You can increase your salary, but the salary is based on the last 12 months. So increasing your salary wouldn't help on either side. It wouldn't help you get more of the loan, and it wouldn't help you any more on the loan forgiveness. We do have a question here. Just hauling OBX, business started operation 2020, applied for LLC February 10th, granted February 25th. Do we fall through the cracks on this one? I would say that, go form over substance. So if you were in business, you had a bank account, you had customers, you were bringing in revenue, you were conducting yourself as a business. And so if it was just you were still talking about it on February 15th, no. But if you were out actively and having a business, I think you're going to count. Now, it probably won't count for a lot because you're going to have very little that can be included. But I do think that it counts because there's no specific clarification of that you have to have this, or this to show that you're in business. It's just, are you in business? And with sole proprietors, they don't even have an LLC to set up. It would just be that they started business.
Protex Nails and Spa, and JJ did do a video that was kind of specifically for you guys in the salon industry business, and it's one of the videos. He says it's on there for his client Mint, but you guys need to go watch that video. So because they're asking, they have an LLC under an S-Corp, pay myself and my workers under a 1099. Is my LLC eligible to apply for PPP? So go make sure you check out that video, and that will help anybody in the industry.
Yep. So the one, yeah, it says Mint on the picture. The name of it is 1099s PPP /EIDL for Mint. And then there's one that goes along with it, EIDL/PPP self-employed second part. But here's the bottom line, that S-Corp, it doesn't have wages, so it's not going to be able to get a PPP. The 1099 recipients can go get a PPP, and you as the owner, if you've paid yourself wages, what doesn't sound like you did, you'd be able to get PPP. If you didn't pay any wages to yourself, then you're probably not going to, you won't get anything because you don't have any self-employment income. Your distributions don't count. Your box one won't count. So sorry to say that you won't, but the people you're paying should.
If I apply for unemployment and EDIL, would that be considered double dipping? Independent contractor?
If you did the PPP and the EIDL? Short answer is yes, but I think that game's over because as of this morning, it sounds like basically if you're a sole proprietor, you're going to get $1,000. So the money must be running out on that. If you did get the 1,000, then you're going to be in a set of circumstances where it'll reduce down your PPP, and then 1,000 of your PPP won't be forgivable. It's certainly not as big a deal as it once was. There is a question here that says, sorry, I lost it. Do you have one?
I'm a sole proprietor. All of my income goes back into my business and is also used to pay bills and day-to-day expenses. I don't set aside money for a paycheck, so is my gross income also my pay?
So when you say sole proprietor, if you're filing, that should be filing a Schedule C, which then the net is subject to self-employment income. So get your Schedule C and find the Schedule SE, because that's going to be based on what we know today, what you will be using to determine your PPP, which is that amount divided by 12. As we know it now, it would not be based on the gross. Here we go. Self-employed individual, no employees. Do I call for PPP forgiveness? If so, what substantiation is necessary? You do qualify without a doubt, and the jury is out on what substantiates it, because obviously, we're required to do 75% on payroll. It's just you. So I don't know that one yet. It may just be that whatever you get, 75% of it just kind of is an automatic, but I don't know that. So stay tuned, because once that is released, that's a huge question that I'm looking forward to getting an answer to. So I would be doing a video. And then as I go live each day at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, also trying to hit things that way as well.
Single member LLC retail store with employees apply for PPP. Can I also apply for the EIDL for notary work? I do no employees under my Social Security cash business.
So they're wanting to know if they can do EIDL.
Mm-hmm.
The short answer would be yes, but now it's limited to 1,000. Not saying that, I mean, every dime's worth it. So I guess you can go get the EIDL. It's going to be $1,000, and it would definitely be more than what the PPP would result in.
Jim Stock, I've seen you've asked this a couple of times, and I would really suggest that you probably contact your bank on this, but I'll ask JJ. We made a mistake calculation on our 12-month payroll on a Chase application. We hit submit and then saw we made a mistake. Can we void one and refile?
Yeah, I mean, the bank may have an answer better than this one, but my understanding is kind of like, once it's in, and it's now in the big black hole of the SBA, and it's working its way through the system, and it's going to spit out the dollars. So what I would do is just upon arrival of those dollars, I mean, I really feel like if it's substantial, that you literally should set up a separate bank account and put that dollar amount in that bank account to just sit there and pay back at the time of loan forgiveness. I don't even know if you can pay the loans back. And then what I would simply document is that it's today. Here's what you discovered. Here's why it was an error. And then when the money came, check with your bank. Like, can you just give it back right then and there? Do you need to hold it? But I would separate it out if they're saying, well, there's nothing you can do about it now. Do not submit another one. This would be one, I think, in my opinion, just you fix it on the backside.
Are you able to include staffing agency labor costs in your base if these employees are dedicated to you and work as if they are your employees?
The short answer is yes, if they're a PEO, okay, or they're a temp agency. But what it comes down to is, are you the common law employer? So I just like to share it because I don't know, when people have come on or not. So I try and keep it a little interesting. But so I travel around the country on behalf of Surgeon, and I present tax seminars to CPAs. And the reason I say that is that many times when us as CPAs are discussing these things, we look at other aspects of the law to see how things are going to apply to that. Because in essence, the law all is somewhat, contingent on each other. Can you read the question again?
Are you able to include staffing agency labor costs in your base if these employees are dedicated to you and work as if they are your employees?
Okay. So if they're your common law employer, you get to count them. And here's what we have to rely on that is the recent tax law that came into play related to qualified business income indicates that you as the business owner, as long as you are the common law employer, which means that you ultimately hold all decisions of that employee, whether they work or they don't, their hours, that other group has no say in any of it. They just are truly a staffing agency. Then you are able to include them. I have clients that are including them, and what they are getting is a statement from the temp agency. Both of them are, it's a PEO, but they're getting a statement from the PEO. What they're getting is what would be the equivalent box 5 wages on W3, which is the equivalent of line 5C wages, column 1 on a 941. And any of the employer benefits and the SUTA, the state unemployment tax, and then any health insurance that the employer is paying. Okay. So you take those dollar amounts, and if you have some certification or letter from that company, for the clients we're working with, the 2 of them, that is working with the bank, and the bank, I think, is contacting the PEO. Short answers, yes, but it'll require some additional documentation. Get your bank on board that that's the circumstances that you have, so that they can now tell you what it is you need to pull together so that you can be doing that ASAP.
What happened to those of us that applied for the EIDL on March 22nd? We were told 10,000 forgivable even if we did not qualify.
Yeah, that I think whatever the law and the circumstances and what you were told at the time that you applied for it sticks. I haven't read what came out today, but typically anytime there's a law change, it's, you know, from this date forward. So the law has always been very fair, in my opinion, of if they're changing something, there's a little bit of notice, or in this set of circumstances, whatever it is that you believed it to be, or you were told it to be at that time, I think that you're going to be good to go. Hey, I just want to say, I see Lo Torres, maybe is how it's pronounced. Hey, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm really enjoying this. I'm honored. I'm glad to put good information out there that's helpful. I started doing this 2 years ago, and I put out lots of videos for clients. And so anyways, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, take a minute to do that. If anything, you'll get a notification of when I put out new videos, which I'm trying to do as often as I can while taking care of my clients as well. And then back here, right here, I wrote this book called JJ the CPA here. I wrote it last fall. And it is, it's an easy read. It looks thick. It's an easy read. Amanda basically made this happen. You can see it's meant for all eyes, whether you're reading close up or not. We did spacing, and then when it published, it did extra spacing, which made it a little thicker. But I put it down to the lowest price possible. Amazon only let me put it down to $12.33. And not at all am I saying, well, support me by buying my book, but I am saying that in my book, I address a number of things that we're dealing with now, which is making banking decisions, financial decisions, understanding the P&L. And so while you're at home and you're concentrating on your business and your numbers and your money, you know, there's a number of things in here. So it's the top 60 questions from my clients over the last 27 years, and very little of them deal with tax. It's about banking and insurance. So anyways, just a helpful resource. Do you have one?
A lot of thank yous.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Clients.
I'm not taking on any new clients at the time. I appreciate that. I've had a couple of CPAs. I don't want to do anything about it right now because I don't feel like it's the right time. We're in a crisis. Maybe what would come out of this is some kind of a way to consult with a group in general, or to create you know, a group. But right now, I appreciate that. I'm really truly not trying to find ways to make any money. So that's why I'm not charging for any of this stuff. But thank you.
Wells Fargo is no longer taking any applications, apparently.
Wow.
So, for PPP as self-employed, do I use gross or net profit in order to figure out my average monthly amount?
The jury's out on that, but I would feel confident it's based on the net. So find your Schedule C, Schedule SE on your individual return.
If we have not filed 2019 taxes, should we submit 2018?
The short answer would be yes, but what would be good is to pull together a P&L. And, you know, if you use QuickBooks, of course, that'll spit it out. You probably want to make sure, though, if you're generating a P&L yourself, whether it's out of some accounting program like QuickBooks or not, that your expenses are only the ones that are going to be tax deductible. Because if you're giving a P&L to a bank, and we all know that small businesses, you know, may run expenses through, especially if it's a sole proprietor, that maybe aren't directly related to the business. It's just the bank account that's paying it, right? So be sure if you're coming up with your own P&L that you're not including expenses that wouldn't be tax deductible. Why? Because you want to make sure your number's proper, but you want to make sure it's not lower than it should be. And then I already have made it for my clients. I'm making a sticky note. But for those that need to pull something together, you know, the bank's needing some documentation of some kind. I've just created a template PDF for clients that don't keep QuickBooks, but there's not a lot of complication to their business, and so it's just a PDF that's a P&L that just includes like every other, you know, every account or category you can think of that you can fill out. So it'd be better than anything. We've got a question from Sarah. I think Sarah's been commenting on stuff over time. Thanks for watching. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for the questions. I'm honored. I just want to make sure we can answer all of them. That's why I wanted to go live. So Sarah has a question. Please clarify if 1099 employees are included as payroll for PPP. So because it's asked a lot of different ways, the person that's paying the 1099 does not get to include what they pay 1099 people in their payroll. The person that's receiving the 1099, okay, meaning they're receiving the revenue, they get to include that 1099 as the receiver in getting the PPP. Okay, someone, Jason said, it's listed on the SBA site. 10K is only 1K per employee, okay? Let's see. Going through these, a number of these. Any way for a small business with employees, 1099 to apply for the PPP? The answer is no, because employees are only defined by W-2. But if you are receiving sole proprietor income, self-employment income, you can apply, and those receiving the 1099s can apply. I'm going to look at the senator letter, so I'll make note of that for tomorrow. Let's see. I'm getting down to, let's see. I'm just now going through, I think, in order. And maybe tomorrow we'll look at the questions on the computer because it looks like I'm able to control better, where on the phone, the questions kept going to the top, the most latest ones. Okay, so 1099 self-employed person required provided deductions, mortgage, rents, utilities, etc., or is it just 1099 earnings? So if you're applying and you're the 1099 self-employed, it would only include your 1099 earnings, including your retirement match, if any, and your health insurance. Let's see. We answer. Yeah, this is good. I'm just reading these. It seems like we have addressed all of these. Talked about back office. So probably here going to wrap up in about 5 minutes, just because I think we've addressed everything. Someone waited for 455 minutes. Last year was a bad year, and as a C Corp, had no paycheck. Is there a way to apply? Man, those are terrible circumstances. I'm sorry for those, and that's common that then your pay goes, and unfortunately there won't be anything that you'll be able to do. All right, JJ said if Schedule C, use amount from SE. So if that number is over 100K, do you use the max of 100K and divide by 12? Yes, but make sure that on the 100K, you do get to add on top of that the health insurance as well as the retirement benefit. But you are absolutely right. Let's see. I know we answered these. You're welcome. Lots of thank yous. Thank you so much. Read that. Hanks. Just to be sure, Mike Decker, do I need to back out the Chapter 122, 24 taxes withheld? Okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking no. If you are concerned about it right now, then be prepared for it. But I don't know how we get around it. As the employer, we have to pay the full payroll. The taxes get withheld. I can't imagine that that'll be the final result. Now we got the head count question.
The Excel spreadsheet is on the website, jjcpahelp.com. Go underneath the PPP. There's a picture that says Excel. There's one that says PDF, and there's one that says Excel.
Yep, and I added last night, I think it was. If you're looking at the PPP, be sure you're picking the right one. If you're doing the last 12 calendar months, which would be April 2019 through March 2020, make sure you're picking the one that's last 12 months. If it's based on 2019, it is different. It's a different format because it's technically easier, and you just pull numbers from your W-2s, where if it's the last 12 months, you're having to pull numbers from your 941. So there is a difference there, and it'll probably be obvious when you open it. I do put some explanations in there. Let's see. I have a 501c3 nonprofit. We have been in business since 17 on January 3rd of this year. We hired 3 employees, but all of them are 1099. So we haven't filed taxes on them or for them yet. Which program? So right now, basically, it sounds like the EIDL is not really an option. If you're a 501c3, best I know is that it's only going to be based on wages. If you're paying people 1099s, that won't be included. Let's see, CH. So in order to pay rents and bills, we must apply for PPP. That's right. And then whatever you get for the PPP, 75% has to be used as payroll, and then only 25% for things like rents and when you say bills, it's meaning utilities. Let's see. Tony asked a lot of good questions. Tony, I answered your question first. I don't know if you caught that. It was your question first. Let's see. I think we answered about the Schedule C. I'm on William. Got here late. Okay, talked about that. Let's see. I just got a notice last week that the IRS didn't get my third quarter payroll statement. Sent it in last week. Will that affect my IDL? No, because that's not based on that. Will it affect your PPP? No. Doesn't make sense to take a PPP if you are a restaurant and closed. I'm sorry for that. That just sucks. That is Wasfi Saman, probably not pronouncing it right. I'm sorry, from Oklahoma. But sorry for the circumstances. If you're not going to open back up within the next 8 weeks, I hate to say it, but I'd say no, because restaurants are a little unique in the sense of when you have your employees and the wait staff, the compensation to them is a lot based on tips. it probably for those individuals, they would benefit more by unemployment, where many times employees would not. So, you're not able to pay tips in essence, meaning that's in the past, right? That's collected. I hope you're not thinking you're never going to open the doors again, but if you're never going to open your doors again, then no, you wouldn't want to take it. You don't want to get left out in the cold. So here's probably what I'd recommend is go ahead, put the application in, get the money, and then just sit on it. Okay. Now, I'm never advocating taking a bottle of water if you don't think you need it when there's other people needing a bottle of water, but you need it. Okay. You need the bottle of water. The only reason that you would be trying to decide if you should take the bottle of water is probably related to this 8-week thing. So that probably will change. Know this, if you qualify for it and you get the money and you don't spend it on payroll and you spend 25% of it on rent and utilities, okay, and you don't spend it on payroll and you don't spend it on payroll, and when the time's up, you can just hand that 75% back. The reason I think you want to have the money now is what if it's time to open back up? You've got to have some money to get rocking and rolling, and the seed money, lack of a better word, so you can get it for the utilities. But know this, okay, let's just say I'm going to use a real simple example here. Let's say that with your payroll, all combined, divided by 12 times 2.5, you qualify for $100,000 of PPP. Okay, so of that, 25,000 can go to rent and utilities and mortgage interest. Okay, 75% needs to go to the payroll, the match, the insurance, and the state unemployment tax. So, but you can't say, well, I qualify for 100. I'm only going to take 25 because I'm going to just spend it on rent. Because if all you get is 25K, then only 25% of your 25,000 can be used for rent. So get the full amount, because as a restaurant, you have a lot of other, you have rent and you have utilities, right? And you may have a note, so it covers that interest. Get with your bank. Typically, banks without much difficulty will put your loans on interest only for 90 days. And at least these types of expenses are being paid. Now, you may have some key employees. I know every employee is key, but so key employees that might be the chef or those that work for or with you that don't get tips, maybe it would be better that they're just then paid through the PPP, meaning you pay them. Those that are in the aspect of collecting rents, maybe they would be better off doing the unemployment. But if I were just to pull it all back, the short answer is yes. But if you don't have money that qualifies, right? If you don't have expenditures that don't qualify, just hold on to it. Don't be tempted, not to say you would be, and then just pay it back at the end. But you've given yourself every option.
Single member LLC, Schedule C with employees. How do you calculate total payroll compensation? Do you add the net from Schedule C to payroll to get the total?
Are they saying they also have employees?
Single member LLC, Schedule C with employees.
Okay, with employees. Yeah, great question. I've got a client that we were walking through that this morning. The short answer is I don't know it for sure, but this is what I think you go with. Apply April 10th because you're falling under self-employed, and I think you're on point. You're going to take your payroll costs of your employees, right, which is everything we talked about. Boom. This is your payroll cost based on employees. Then you're going to take whatever your self-employment income is. You're going to add the two together, right? Come up with now one big number divided by 12 times 2.5. Now, I know you asked about, is it the gross or the net? I really feel confident it's going to be based on the net, because you can have a sole proprietor, that grosses $1 million, but they net 75. So I would say to you this: be prepared for your payroll plus your net, which would be on your Schedule SC, roll those together into one number, divide it by 12. That'd be the amount of your monthly payroll costs on the PPP app times 2.5 for a max loan.
Do you know about CBD retailers? Will they qualify for EIDL?
Well, the EIDL, I think now is really not going to be anywhere near a help unless you have multiple employees, right? So if you are in that realm, you qualify like anybody else. I understand that there might be some stipulations because it's the federal government, et cetera, et cetera. I've not seen anything on it. If you are, what did they say? CBD oil or?
CBD.
So
Industry.
does CBD,
retailer.
does CBD mean marijuana?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's a really good question. I would look at the application. Let your bank help you with guidance on that. You know, obviously, because things unfortunately are illegal at the federal level, then it probably wouldn't be able to get help at that federal level. But I also don't think that's the spirit of this.
It's THC free. The CBD is hemp. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So then, yeah, you would be able to qualify just like anybody else. Was that the full question?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's adding on to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
To help out. Yes, the sole proprietors are supposed to wait until April 10th, right?
Yep. But have your ducks in a row. Make sure your bank is going to work with sole proprietors. It is a different mix. Really pay attention to any guidance that's coming out from the SBA. I don't know why, but there's not a lot of news going on about this. So I am going to be tomorrow night on One America Network on the show The Ledger.
The Daily Ledger.
The Daily Ledger.
Graham Ledger.
With Graham Ledger. Do we know what time?
Do not know what time it's going to air. Normally Graham comes on in the evenings at 7:30 Central Time, so I'm assuming it's going to be around that time.
Okay. Well, we shoot it at 12:30, so I'll let you all know. All right. So next question. Oh, Scott, you have a question here. Thank you for watching all my videos. Let's see. Unfortunately, I applied for the EIDL one day before I started watching your videos. I haven't been approved yet. We'll see what happens. Thanks again for what you're doing. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, you know this. You might have, I mean, you're going to get the stinger where whatever you get with the PPP, you're going to have it reduced. That'd be the amount that's not forgiven. But you're going to get the 10K. Most likely, I'm assuming, because if you got it before you watched the video. So interesting on that. And then also, here's the thing. I wonder if there'll be a change on how this is all playing out related to the PPP at the tail end of it, because of the fact that they just reduced it. Now we have three categories. We have one is if you got the EIDL before there was the CARES Act, did you get the money between the CARES Act and today, April 6th, because then April 6th forward, it's just based on employees. It's 1,000. How does it apply? So there'll be some additional there. Really, at the end of the day, know this on the EIDL, it is still all the same purpose. So don't look at it as an advance on the PPP. Just do you qualify for the PPP? Is it going to be higher than what you'd qualify for the EIDL? Knowing it's a max 10. Then just go with that PPP. Let's see. Looks like maybe some of these we weren't answering their questions, so they repeated the
thank
question.
You for that, because like I said, I've been trying to keep up with all of them. We have received a lot, so if you didn't get something answered, and then also come back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Time on JJ the CPA's YouTube channel, and he will be doing this again. So if your question is not answered, because we don't want the video to be too long, because then people won't go back and rewatch it.
True. And so here's what what we'll do. I'm going to for the benefit of tomorrow, we'll just record a really quick video, and It'll be a video under a minute, which, you know, if you watch mine, I never can talk under a minute, but it'll be under a minute, and it'll just say for, you know, for 4/7 show. And if you want to go in there and then put in your question, then we'll answer those questions first for the show tomorrow. And then when the show comes on, we'll leave that up, or we'll take it down, and then you'd have to ask questions in here. But that way people can get them. And if there's some repeats, we could address them. So we'll do that. I'll shoot a quick video when we're done here. And that way you can put questions in there for tomorrow's show. And then I plan to go live every day. You know, I thought maybe 5 or 6 people, 10 people would come. We were over 400. We've averaged at least 370 the whole time. So,
so thank you guys
yeah,
for
thank you.
watching
Blows
and
me
your
away.
support. And we're doing the best that we can. We're going on 3 hours here and about to close shop on it. So that way you guys will be able to rewatch this and use it as a guide, because then it just makes it easier on you guys. So
yeah, I think I'm right down. Yeah, thank you for those that subscribe, Chung, and I probably missed some. Thank you so much. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe. Thank you so much. Real quick, let's see, Jay Lexel. Please talk about on your video, sole proprietor, can I use my business 1099s and just Schedule C, or should I only submit Schedule C with my business name and info? I would do both. You know, the amount you got on your 1099 should be already in the C, so include both because they substantiate it more. Simple Grill, JJ, I have an LLC. I'm the only employee, so I do not have 940, 941s. The bank's telling me I have to wait until Friday. That is true. When you say you're the only employee, remember, in the technical world, for us CPAs and bankers and lawyers, that's all defined by W-2. So you will need to wait. Let's see. And then it seemed like there was one more. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate it. Connie, Paul, Fida, Sunny, Gail, Auto Advocate. Thank you all so much. Les, Jim Stock. Let's see. Lucretia, should I apply for the PPP first or EIDL? At this point, the EIDL, if you're just a sole proprietor, is going to be $1,000. So I would check out doing the PPP. ARK, thank you so much. Appreciate the support. Thank you for subscribing. Jim Stock, if I have not filed 19, should I send 18? I promise to buy your book. I appreciate that. You know what? It's going to depend on your bank. And so what I would do is have your 18, but I will put on my website, JJ the CPA Help, at least by the video tomorrow, just kind of a template of the P&L. But I would have a P&L for 19 because especially if it's going to be a higher net, because that's what it'll count for. Let's see, Robert of Philadelphia Salons. Thanks for this. You guys are amazing. Comforting to hear your voice. Thank you so much. I think I recognize your logo. Hopefully you saw I did. It was in the middle of the night, I think, last night that I answered a few of your questions. So thank you so much. And you sound like you are one of a kind salon, the way that you're taking care of everybody in your salon. So wonderful. And thank you for saying I've got your back. Let's see, I applied for the employee retention credit. How will my business receive the refund from $7,200? Awesome. Well, good job. You are all over that. Will that refund come as a check or a direct deposit? 7002. Hey, if you don't mind, I'm going to make that down, but I just was able to look at it over the weekend, and I didn't note anything on how they actually pay you, but that's what that's all about. So let me answer that tomorrow on the 7200. Thank you so much, Toy. And Shamika, what if you have cash income also as a one LLC member? So it'll go based on your tax return. Frederick Lowe, thank you, JJ. I'll repost my question on your 1-minute video. Okay, thank you. Sorry we missed it, Frederick. Thank you so much. Let's see. Thank you for subscribing. R. Grace Cross. professional organizer. Workers' comp cost included in payroll. Good question, and it's not. It's not considered the type of insurance that counts. And it doesn't count on the loan or the forgiveness. Holly, thank you, JJ. Maybe a flow chart for PPP filing would help answer a ton of questions. True. Hopefully all subscribe. Let's see, Amber, what is the max an agent can charge me to apply for a PPP? Go somewhere else. The agent, it's 1% typically. There's a sliding scale, but the bank's supposed to pay. You should not pay a dime if you're going somewhere and they're charging you anything other than their time to help you put together numbers. Do not pay someone to help you prepare this. And if you have someone that says, hey, I've got a bank, the bank's supposed to pay them, period, the end. So do not pay somebody to help you do this other than the time. I mean, I'm sure at the end of the day, I mean, the 2 hours I may have spent helping my client pull together documentation, I haven't thought about it, but it might be fair to charge them that time if they're, benefiting by getting a $15 to a $3 million loan. But agents are charging a fee, so don't do that. Let's see.
Yes, so we will be putting the website in the description of the video. I can't do that right now because I can't edit a live video, but it will go on there.
Let's see, www.jjthecpahelp.com. I did put it in the comments. I don't know where that goes. Let's see, RZ, my bank has been slow going. I'm worried they don't have the PPP. Yeah, I'll tell you this, if you're self-employed, I wouldn't worry too much in the sense of you can't do it till Friday. But if your bank's not able to be up and running tomorrow, bless their hearts, but you probably should start at least asking around. I wouldn't tell the bank, not that you're being deceitful, but at least just look around. There's some other banks that you might be able to work with, but then do definitely be above board. And I know you would be, ours of our, but there's nothing wrong with being an advocate for yourself and asking around. So if they're not up and running by tomorrow, the 7th, and taking applications, then I definitely think you want to look somewhere else. Can an S Corp LLC with one employee include 1099 or distribution in payroll? Unfortunately not. It's W-2 only. And thank you for subscribing, TM. Greg, how do you believe the EIDL up to 10K grant is calculated? I'm going to have to take a look at that. What I'm hearing is it's $1,000 per employee, but it's also supposed to cover other expenses. So I'm not sure if there's $1,000 per employee or if you only have 2 employees, do you get $2,000 in sum?
JA Law, we did answer your question on the PPP application, the student loan default. JJ did explain that, so make sure you.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you in 2 seconds is I think you have an issue there. I think you should bring it up with your bank. If you have a default though, maybe it falls outside of the category of what maybe is included in this because it is a student loan. Student loans are, they're viewed differently a little bit. So ask your bank if your bank just says, well, looking at number one, it won't qualify. You might be at the back of the line a little bit, but do some research on it. If I see something on it, I'll be sure to, I'll try and remember to bring that up, but life happens. So let's see, the Bella Badula, thank you for everything you do, JJ. Honestly, thank you. Thank you so much. Blue Sky, hit the like button. Thank you. Appreciate everybody that's subscribing. Thanks for all the support. R. Romaro, are there any loans available for coming to help us out the crisis to rebuild our business? Yes. So if you go to the SBA, I know that we've been talking about the EIDL and the 1,000 and the 10,000. That's all the advance amount that you then don't have to pay back. But you can get a regular old SBA loan through the website up to $2 million. Okay, the PPP is based on payroll, but if you don't have payroll, or you need money more than what the PPP result is going to be, then you can do a loan in that direction. let's see. Oh, looks like I got kicked. Jim Stock. Let's see.
He's asking if you haven't filed your 2019
I thought
taxes.
okay.
Yeah, we've already answered.
Okay. Yeah, it might just be that it popped.
Is there a chance we still get that 10,000 from EIDL if we applied very early on, or should we consider that a wash?
I think you should. I think you should be getting the 10K. I think that that would be not retroactive.
Small business landscaping owner, as of now, still considered essential, still losing jobs from the COVID. Hope you guys are healthy. Thank you, Mr. Hall. We're thinking of you guys too. JJ, please make a video about single member LLC process on PPP. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
I still cannot find the P&L PDF where it is on your website.
Yeah, I haven't put it up yet. I was saying I made a sticky note. I'll get that up as soon as I can. Yeah, I was saying that I need to get it up there. Let's see, Brian Hedrick. What if your work comp is state run? So any way, shape, or form, the work comp is. I'm not sure the context of the question, but work comp doesn't come into this in any way. But it wouldn't affect. If you've had wages in the past or you've had self-employment income in the past, you should be able to qualify for the PPP. But the issue would be, are you going to have those self-employment income or wages on yourself if you're collecting work comp? Let's see. S. Patel, Donka, gracias. Thank you. Thank you. Geraldo, Zavala, great job, buddy. Great. Thank you so much. Blue Sky. Can you place on your website URL in? Oh, okay. Okay. Sarah Beer, thank you for all the information. You and your team have been working tirelessly these last few weeks. Thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody's support and watching. Let's see. Fresh Pals, Pet Spa. Hi, JJ. I am a dog grooming company as an LLC. I'm the only employee. How would I qualify for the PPP? So if you've been paying yourself wage, it would be through that. If you're a sole proprietor, it'd be based on your net Schedule C. If you are a partnership, which I don't think you could be, because obviously you need a partner. So really what it comes down to is, for you, if you paid yourself wages, it would be based on that. If you are filing a Schedule C or a Schedule SE, you would use that as your filing. And yeah, you're definitely hit, right, with the dog grooming business. Let's see. Would you recommend filing taxes for 2019 before applying for PPP, or will the P&L form work alone? Now, if you have a separate tax return, let me scratch that. If you have wages that you're basing this on, right, you don't need to file your 19 returns. You just need to have your payroll forms. If you are self-employed, then I think the short answer is get the P&L and giddy up on getting the tax return prepped up, at least the Schedule C. You can go to irs.gov, which I never recommend someone go prepare their own, but we're in a pinch, we're in a crisis. Your accounting office may be closed. So you can go to a Schedule C, just don't, I know you wouldn't, but you can just tell the bank, hey, here's my P&L. I did put it on a Schedule C because it's then in the category. Here's your income, here's your expenses. So what I would say is, don't wait for the bank to come and tell you, oh, we need this instead. Go ahead and just do it now. P&L, and then being a sole proprietor, get it on Schedule C. And let's see. Oh, Matthew. So thank you, Catalingua, I think it was. Matthew Conrad is a fellow CPA with my own firm. Thank you for your guidance, and we're all learning and advising our clients. You bet. Well, thank you so much. I'm honored. I teach with Surgent, so maybe we'll run into you as we travel around. And then Surgent, I do a monthly show. Amanda writes most of it, but we do a monthly show called Futurecast, where we cover a lot of things that are going on in the tax code. So as a fellow CPA, hope to meet you. Let's see, JA Law, question 2 on PPP application. Oh, sorry, we already asked that. Let's see. All right. Can I hire new employees if and when I received PPP because my 3 employees told me they're better off getting employment. Yes, it would be a replacement. SBA, document that they left, that they left, even if it's just some email or a copy of the text, or document it, or ask them to say, hey, you signed a document saying you left. And the reason for that is that you're able to show later that you were replacing staff that left. Jay Fazios, SBA now saying EIDL grant is only $1,000 per employee. Will the forgivable amount still go up to $10K if the loan is approved for that much or more? I'm going to say yes, because the $10K was, you just don't have to pay it back. Okay, so up to the $10K. Let's see, JS, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate that. And thank you. Blue Sky, thank you. BR, let's see, we talked about that. Timothy, can a bank charge you higher interest if you didn't previously have an account there? Hell no. I don't like to cuss, but hell no. Hell no. That's straight up illegal. It's 1%. All they can do is charge you less, but I don't even think they can do that. Period. The end. It's 1%. I mean, call the bank police on that. Let's see. Ravi, hi JJ, thanks for all you do in your help. We have an S Corp. We did not run payroll for 19 as our expenses were higher than revenues. Sorry to hear about that. That's how it works sometimes. We did not run payroll in 18. Can we qualify for the PPP? Well, I hate to say it. The only saving grace that you may have is if you already paid wages this last quarter, because quite frankly, you would have had to have already been being paid wages to anybody on February 15th, because that's kind of the date where what were you doing on February 15th? That's what then they're going to allow you to do, whether it's rent or a loan or utilities. Shamika, what bank have you heard best for it at yet? So in Oklahoma, we just have local banks here that I would recommend. On the national, I think we just heard that Wells Fargo is not doing it. I've got 2 clients that was able to go through Chase pretty easy. Let's see, Silver Medical Transportation. If an individual makes 100K from pass through on my S, can I apply for the independent contractor to apply for PPP? Great question. The K1 from your S Corp is not considered self-employment income. As I understand it now, the answer would be no, unfortunately, because the K1 and any distributions is considered investment income, not earned income, and therefore it wouldn't count, unfortunately. Let's see, hopefully y'all are subscribing. Let's see, Trung Do, if my employees were contractors up until January of this year and have been W-2 since, how would I calculate the payroll? So up through January, you've only got about 2 weeks there. If you're in business February 15th, it counts. There is a provision that you can go, and basically what you're going to be able to do is get a very small amount based on those 2 weeks. So get with your banker, because the banks are really the one determining, and I'm not saying rightfully so, but at the same time, the banks are determining how you're coming up with that. So get with your bank. You would qualify, it just may not be much. Let's see. Ibran Jose, thank you. You're awesome. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Hopefully everybody's subscribing. Question, if you don't spend all the 75% on payroll, do I have to return the money, or can I pay other business expenses and pay it back over time? So the official answer here is break it up into 3. Whatever you don't use that's going to be forgivable, you have 10 years to pay it back. Payments are deferred 6 to 12 months. It's a 1% interest rate. I think you need to wait past the 8 weeks. We don't have a lot of guidance on this, but if you're taking things literal, there are penalties, and it's considered like you've done something wrong if you take the money and you use it on other things besides payroll. But I kind of think it's like, hey, the time ran out. I didn't have payroll to spend it on. Here's what I'm left over, and now I'm going to pay it over time. I don't think it's I got money. I'm going to go ahead and just start paying some other bills on it, and I'll just worry about paying it back. I'm saying that's not the spirit of the deal on that. I understand that that may be a reality. So all I can tell you is, you know, I'm just telling you what the law states. Then there's reality. But at the end of the day, what I think is like if you're, you know, your mom or dad or your grandma or whatever, your grandpa is like, hey, here's 20 bucks, go to the movies, bring me the change. Okay. You went to the movies, you came back, here's the change. Okay. The event's over with, the time passed, here's what's left over. And if your parents said, well, I tell you what, you can just go ahead and give it back to me, but if you want to keep it, you can just pay me back over time. All right, Tim, thanks for all you do. Just completed my PPP app. Yes, nicely done, Tim. Make sure you hit subscribe. All right, Leah, how do you prove you have been affected by COVID-19? They're just taking your word for it. And you know, basically, when you go to substantiate, they're going to see your bank statements and did revenue change. Did you pay your employees? So there's a little bit of an after fact that's being given out in good faith. Thank you for watching. Let's see, Simon, great info. This has been changing daily, and you've been a great source of info. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Mr. Hall. Okay, good question. Your auto advocate turned down by BOFA. Any recommendations for a credit union or bank that is more forgiving? Well, I'll tell you, you ask them why you got turned down, because there is no turning anybody down in this. The only way you would get turned down is you didn't have wages. Okay, then you can't get the PPP. You shouldn't have gotten turned down. The only way you could have gotten turned down, the only way, let me reiterate, the only way is if you don't have wages. In the law, and I'm going to try and not get upset at this bank, in the law, it states specifically that you are zero risk. And now, don't get me wrong, a bank may say, hey, we're going to take a pass. Okay, so a bank's not required. So make sure you understand why. It may have just been, hey, we're turning you down because we don't think you're going to get most of it forgiven, and we don't want to carry the loan. It could be, hey, we're going to go ahead and turn it down because we've already done enough of these. It's not possible that you get denied on this. So I would check around. And in fact, I'd ask that bank. And if they've been rude to you, put it on Facebook. I mean, just go after that bank. It is terrible. It's disgusting. They should be ashamed of themselves that you left that bank thinking that you got turned down. Shame on them. And that banker personally, I shame them. They should have at least let you know, here's why we can't do this. Here's some recommendations. Shame on that banker. Shame on that banker. That is disgusting. We're in a crisis. Your house is burning down, and they say, oh, you're turned down. Wrong. These banks have fire hoses for you. Okay. They're making 5%. I'm glad they're getting 5%. Do they deserve it? Sure. So ask around to some friends. I don't know what your community is. Go to the Banking Association website. And don't walk in telling you, it's not deceitful, but don't walk in telling the other bank that this other bank turned you down, because they're going to think it's for something that you did wrong. And I guarantee you did it. But ask that bank. Don't call them back mad. You don't need to tell them that I said shame on them, but call them back and say, I need to know why I got turned down, because what I'm being told by JJ, the CPA, is that it's not possible to get turned down unless I didn't have wages. So you may have a bank that's full of a bunch of idiots, okay? And you probably do. The deep breath came from Amanda, which means I need to jump off the soapbox here, but at the same time, it makes me really mad. So I'm sorry, auto advocate. Yeah, get at another bank. It's not possible unless you don't have payroll. Let's see. Ringham, have any of your clients gotten paid yet? No, no one's gotten any money. I think all of them have been accepted as in they got it, and they're saying, hey, we got it. Paul, what is a typical turnaround for the SBA? Right now, it's 2 to 3 weeks, and it's just been lowered down. Let's see. Sole proprietor with one worker, apply April 10th. Yes. Thanks for answering headcount. I used 215 headcount, which was our lowest. Good. Let's see. Mike, what period is used for the 8 weeks? It's the good question. It is the date of approval is what it says in the law, not the date you get the money, the date of approval. And I'd go strictly with 56 days. Do not mess around with it. If you've got utilities covering that 8 weeks, get a hold of the utility company, say, what do I owe? And send them a check. Because the reason that the bank examiners want to see the check copies is they want to know the date that you paid it. So it's got to be an expense during the period and that you paid during the period. So you want to be on alert related to that. Let's see, any updates for self-employed sole pro since last video? No, not really. We're still waiting. There's some things that came out today. I'm going to take a look. Let's see, more. Michael, net of your Schedule C or SE. They should be the same. The SE is just more clear cut for the bank. Let's see, Chung, for self-proprietors, are we using the gross or the net divided by 12 to get our monthly? I'm going to say it should just be, I'm assuming net, okay? When you go to apply on the 10th, we should know by then, but I don't know how it would be on the gross. Let's see. Thanks, I submitted my application yesterday. Your videos helped me put the paperwork together. Good, I'm glad and I appreciate that. Rachel, I've been working with Santander. They keep telling me that they're going to be ready Wednesday. Your thoughts? I just start looking around and just asking, like, who do you know that's put in and it got accepted, and just have a backup plan. And then the reason to talk with other banks is to see, well, what is it that they are requiring? I pay an IT consulting service monthly for critical services. Can the vendor be counted as a utility? No. If you're defining critical services as like just a phone service that's answering the phones, no. So I may misunderstand, but utilities are gas, water, electric, telephone, internet, as I understand it right now. Let's see. If I qualify for unemployment because I'm on W-2 and still have 1099s, can I still apply for the SDA loan as an independent contractor? So when you say SDA, you probably meant SBA. SBA, though, has several. Yes, you can apply for your independent contractor with the EIDL or on the PPP. Let's see. So Jason Ray, on our Schedule C, if we wrote off 100K of wages, can we use that? Absolutely. So if you're saying, and it's very possible, if you paid wages, then yes, that's the amount that you would be using. So go to your W-3 if you're going to base it on 19. Go to your 941s because you should be having those things, because that's what then will be determining your PPP. Let's see, Tim. Hey, what's up? I'm a small proprietor selling items on eBay, which I then get a 1099. I did not file taxes yet for 19. What do I use to apply for the EIDL? So for the EIDL, they don't ask for anything. They just ask for the information, your ID number. It'll be interesting to see who applies maybe by tomorrow, so we can get a little feedback and see what qualifies. If it's just you, is it 1,000 or is that it? If you're getting a 1099, then you should be reporting this, I would assume, on Schedule C. So your net on Schedule C would be available for the PPP, which you can start getting on Friday, April 10th. And I keep thinking we're gaining on it.
No, we're not. That's why I'm saying that I really think we're
I'm going to try. It looks like I'm getting close. I'm going to see what I can do. Can I give bonuses through payroll and increase wages to make it forgivable? Unfortunately, no. Ben, JJ, the CPA, down with PPP. Yeah, you know me. I love it. Awesome job. JJ, Ben, Rachel, Tim, Jason, Mike, Gene, Brian, Chung, I think you already said. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. Appreciate you all watching. We're going to go live tomorrow. S. Patel, Love your passion, JJ. Thank you so much. Great work, JJ. Q is, does loss in business count for borrowing in these packages? No. In the PPP, it's not based on anything other than payroll. So it's okay if you've had a loss. Let's see. I'm from Oklahoma, so I'm really bad at pronouncing names. Shadish, great work, OJ. Oh, or JJ. Sorry, I already answered that. Let's see. Jason, can we use our wages that we wrote off Schedule C? Yes, if it's W-2. R. Romero, didn't the Federal Reserve announce that they will buy all the PPP loans? Oh, interesting. Probably. Shape Flicker, I shame them. Absolutely. If we're talking about that bank that quote unquote said they turned somebody down. JJ, does owning another business disqualify or impact the PPP loan for the other businesses I have that I'm applying for? No. There is a question number 3 on the application that's talking about affiliations. Mostly what they're looking for is there more than 500 employees with the affiliated group? You do apply per ID number, EIN. The only employees that will count are going to be those in that EIN. So do a separate app for each, and then just disclose if you have common ownership 50% or more. Let's see. Let's see. Lubna, I have a security company. Last year we had 125 employees, and this first quarter we jumped to 225. Wow. Can I use this quarter to determine the average for the PPP? Absolutely. The law actually dictates it should be the last 12 months. So get it, jump on it, and you should. You deserve it. Good job. Excellent that you're growing that fast. Keep it up. And great, you're keeping people employed. Let's see, Gene McIntyre. So for the self-employed single member LLC, we have to wait till the 10th. Yes. Why are we giving our 1099s to PPP? That just substantiates your income. If you are basing your income based on what 1099s you received, it's your documentation to the bank that you actually got paid that. Texas, contact your Chamber of Commerce. Okay, some info there. Thanks for your time, Brian. Let's see. Someone else just finished their application. Reasonable time frame I hear on Chase is about 2 days. Let's see. Do you think that the PPP is going to run out of money? I do. I think, though, it'd be slower than I thought. I bet it, though, is 3 to 4 weeks. And then the government has said that they'll replenish. Can we use wages line in our Schedule C for self-employed? Yes, if you're self-employed and you have wages on Schedule C, it'll be both. It'll be your net plus the wages if you're indicating wages that you paid are on W-2s. What if someone has back payroll taxes? Could they get denied? Understanding is no. Apply and find out, but the answer is no. It's supposed to be separate. Let's see. My banker requested a supplemental worksheet today asking how I would use the amount requested. I filled it out and she said everything looks good and will be up for final approval. Yeah, banks, they don't have to do this with you. I think banks, I've got a video called Smart Bankers, and in that, if you think about it, if a bank knows that most of your loan's not going to be forgiven, that means they have to carry the note, which means they're carrying a note at 1%, which means they're using reserves at 1%. So in my book, JJ the CPA here, which is on Amazon, I put it down as low as possible, $12.33. What's up, buddy? This future MLB star, Cooper Jensen, 6'5" lefty, 17 years old. So yeah, if they've asked for that, and then I'm going to be, when I get time, I'm going to put up together something like that will just help you kind of help budget. Let's see. Philip, electric count, no employees submit for EDL. My assumption is the amount was going to be 10K, did not sub PPP because 10K works for me. I don't pay myself being a sole prop, so didn't apply for the PPP. So I don't know if you've applied for the EIDL or not. Get on it. see what you come up with. However, it's going to be low. The PPP now may really end up just being what you want to do, especially if you're only going to get like 1,000 from the EIDL.
And your son is cooking you dinner, so.
All right.
You need to.
I'm going to try and buzz through, but I need something else to drink. I've drank through 3 things. And some orange juice, maybe. You have to remember, I talk standing up for 8 hours. This is nothing. I get to sit down.
That's the thing.
I get to talk.
I have to go soon.
Okay. All right.
I have to check
Okay. Let's see. Does an LLC owned by my wife and husband, no employees qualify for the program? If you have self-employment income, yes, look to Schedule SC on your individual return. Should be receiving the PP fund this week. Awesome. Let me know. I answer the phone on behalf of the SBA, and I am more informed because of you. Wow. Well, thank you. LTV 999. Hey, what's up? You comment a lot. For S Corporation, when calculating the total loan amount, are we supposed to include both employee and employer payroll taxes? You don't include the payroll employer taxes. Thank you. It's irrelevant about including employee taxes because that's just part of the wages. So go with schedule or go with box 5 of W3 if the bank wants it for calendar year 19. And then if they want, if they want the last 12 months, 941, line 5C, column 1. If my employees applied for unemployment, will this increase my unemployment insurance as an employer? Most states, yes. How do you add utilities to the PPP app? You don't. It's part of the monies that you get to spend when you get it. The only thing in the PPP app is the payroll, the employer retirement match, employer paid health insurance premiums, and the state unemployment tax that the employer pays. Gene, let's see. Can I ask if a nail tech got paid by 1099 and nail salon but doesn't have to pay anything like rent, utilities, can apply for the PPP? What's the percentage of loan that will be forgiven? The short answer is yes, you can apply. In terms of the percentage of loan to be forgiven, because you don't have those expenses, the jury's out on that. I don't know yet, because it will be interesting to see how we're able to calculate that. Let's see. Can you do a short video for sole proprietor, self-employed? So if you go to my YouTube channel and go to playlists, you will find a playlist specific to that. Let's see the exact name. I've got a number of videos. It's just called PPP for the self-employed. And there's 5 videos in there specific. Let's see. I think Wells just said, and yeah, they're not, okay, not businesses less than 50. Steve, self-employed with a newsstand, rent of $12K a month. No employees with several 1099. What amount do I use? So if you're self-employed, it'll be the net Schedule C. Grab that as well as your Schedule SE. By Department of Health, we cannot see patients for a dental work. It's going to be May 8th. Can I pay employees while sitting home as a deferred salary? No, it's either salary or not, but you might just consider doing it in advance. I've got a video where I talk about that. So ARK, if you get the PPP, use it to pay them. If not, unless they extend the 8 weeks, then you may end up owing it back. Let's see. Luducian, I think I've seen comments from you before. Thanks for tuning in. Gene, thank you. Each person on LLC that gets a K1 can file independently for a PPP. So if an LLC is taxed as a partnership and there's an amount in box 4 or 14, the answer is yes. And individually, as an independent contractor, Shamika, as an independent contractor, can you also Can you also still get unemployment for your state? I don't think so. That's never been the case. Mike Trevor, thank you for your help. You bet. Thank you. Hope everybody's subscribing. Really appreciate that. If I use my Schedule C to prove how, if I don't write a check to myself, if I use Schedule C, how to prove if I don't write a check to myself? Yeah, I don't know, Dora. I understand your question. How do I do stuff with my monies? If you're self-employed, stay tuned. I know that at least rent and utilities is going to count, health insurance. Oh, here we go. Ryan Johnson, thanks for your time and information from Ponca City. You bet. Thanks for tuning in. Gene, I do subscribe. Thank you so much. Rachel, please help me working with Santander for 20 years. They keep telling me they're not ready. They said they will be ready Wednesday. Okay, I think I answered it, which is maybe just start looking at another bank. Chocolate J's, I'm filling out my app and wanted to know if I'm to add the building lease utilities for average payroll, and if not, how do I add it? No, you don't. It's only wages, employer match, and employer match, health insurance, and the state unemployment taxes. Rent and utilities is part of what you get to spend. R. Romano, get some sleep. Thank you. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to shoot that short video. You can answer your questions tomorrow. I am in the tornado belt. Love JJ the CPA. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, Grace. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully you'll subscribe. Dax, Gene. Let's see. I drove through Oklahoma. What a nightmare. Let's see. Gene. I think I got to the end of them. If employees getting more in unemployment than regular pay with a 600 boost, doesn't make sense to get PPP loan. Well, the PPP is all for you. If you have employees that are going to get the unemployment and it makes sense that they can get it and it qualifies, I agree. Then maybe get the unemployment. I definitely. Bob Marsh, fellow CPA in Florida. I have clients that have 1099 in 2019, but more income in 2020. Advice. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I wonder if you would be able to do last 12 months P&L, especially if a CPA. I mean, I understand banks may overthink what we've prepared, but maybe something over the last 12 months, because technically that's what we're supposed to be looking at. Rachel, thank you. All right. All right, Gene McIntyre, don't forget the profit and loss. You got it. Eric Rogers, thank you. David Lee, you bet. Thank you. Let's see. If you previously defaulted on an FHA, am I eligible for the PPP? Yes, but you might double check with the bank. Make sure you understand the definition of it. BKA, you bet. Thank you. Let's see. Eric, as a truck driver, I was planning on saving this summer to make repairs on my truck. If I use my net pay, will it be forgivable? Not for that, unfortunately. Let's see, Jay. Yes, Jay Fazio, have you done a video about the tax credits, best tax credit available for an S Corp? Yes, go to my playlist, and I have coronavirus planning 31 videos, coronavirus tax credits 16 videos, personal finance decisions 65 videos, business finance decisions 65 videos. I've got stuff on the CARES Act. I've got stuff on the CARES Act. So yeah, maybe 100 videos that you can dive into. I try and keep each to the subject. Joe, thanks for all you do to me. Thank you. Bella Balulu, sorry if I'm not saying that right. Thank you. I earn most of my income through 1099 miscellaneous, but it's box 1 rents. It goes on Schedule E, not C. Do you think there's a chance I qualify for the PPP as an independent contractor? Frank, I hate it, but I don't think you do, because it's not self-employment income. Let's see. Thank you. Thank you from New York City. Is 1099 income only, crash and burn? No, it's going to be what's on your Schedule C. So the video for sole proprietorship is new updated video for PPP. David Lee, No, I haven't had any updates, so maybe I understand your question better. I haven't updated it, but I haven't come across any updates. I am going to have to go through and figure out what EIDL videos I probably need to pull or change, since we know there's difference there. Can you apply it to banks? No. Crash and burn. It's, you say cash and 1099 question mark. It's whatever's on your Schedule C. Oh, you're very kind, auto advocate. Just, hey, $12.33. You can go buy my book if you want, and then hit subscribe, but no need. And I think you were the one. I'm telling, shame on the bank. Photox 66, you bet. I wish you were my client too. RP 2000, you bet. Greg, single member LLC. Am I an employer? No, you're self-employed. So get ready for tomorrow. Fada, I'm buying your book and not missing a day of your videos. You're the best CPA channels. Thanks again. Thank you. Michael, can a sole proprietor with no employees get the PPP forgiven? I don't know. That's to be seen. All right. Hey, so we are at 3 hours and 40 minutes, and I talked for an hour and a half on the great Facebook Marketing Ninjas show, which was great. So glad to get a lot of great info out there. Thank you, Crash and Burn, Little Drum, Brian Kim, you're welcome. Hope you guys subscribe. I really appreciate it. I tell you what I'll do. I got to go eat. I'll leave this up for a few more minutes, only so that if those of you are frantically, want to get your questions in, you can. But know this, I'm going to shoot a video. It'll be less than 1 minute, and you can put your questions on that, and then I'll answer those first when I go live tomorrow at 4 p.m. Melissa, will I autograph your book? Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing. Let's see. All right. Hey, thanks to everybody. I'm just going to leave it up so that if you just have any last minute questions you want to list, but it would be better to just, I'm going to shoot that video in the next half hour, and I'll put it as going live on 4/7. So anyways, thanks to everybody. I hope you subscribe, and I'm glad it's providing good information. I'll go live every day at 4 p.m. Central to do this, and then I'll continue to spread the word. I'd love it if you shared my videos. Go to my playlist. I've been doing videos for almost 2 years now, so I address things about getting loans and insurance and other business ideas, and so I'm happy to help and loving it. And if there's anything else you're interested in, I bet I got a video on it if it's related to money, not just taxes. And then if you subscribe, then you'll be able to get notifications when I post other videos. So, hey, thanks for everything. I appreciate it. It touches my heart to have so many people on, and it's been great. I really appreciate it. All right. Hey, I have to end it by saying you've never met a CPA quite like me. All right, I say it. I love you all. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow, and look for that video. And I'm going to go eat. Thank you. thanks, y'all. I'm going to end the live, and then we will look for the video shortly. And then I have the first episode of the CPA show with my great friend, Justin McCall of CPA, president and founder of CPA Enterprises. So we got that being released. We're going to talk about PPP as it relates to wages and K-1 income. And then I'll shoot here shortly the 1-minute video that you can comment on, and for your questions tomorrow live. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you subscribe. Have a great night. And remember this, we're going to get through it. JJ, the CPA, out. Thanks so much.